This is Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. Russell Hunter, welcome to the studio.
Man, I'm stoked to be here.
Well, I didn't even really recognize you as you were walking up to the studio because you didn't have big boards with you with these crazy drawings and stuff on there. So do you get recognized in public because you got a pretty good Instagram and YouTube stuff going?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Sometimes it's good. I mean, most of the time, because of the algorithm, the people that recognize me are the people that are getting that all the time. And so the people that don't recognize me are the people that recognize me and they don't like me are usually people that know somebody who's been in the show. So yes,
they've been in the crossfire.
Yeah, I've probably eaten some contaminated food in my time.
Okay.
I
don't know that I would go to the university center or most of these campuses, depending upon what you're doing. But let's back up just a little bit because, for everyone that would recognize your flannel on your face, they obviously kind of have an idea of what you do for a living or what at least you do in your public profile. So, let's just go back to your childhood just a little bit to kind of set the scene. And so because I didn't grow up in a Christian household. And so I missed out on a lot of the Christianese, but because I was raised in Oklahoma, I call it country music theology. So you believe in God, you're baptized as a kid. It's not believer's baptism and, vote Republican and listen to country music. And then you get to go to heaven because God loves all those things. So that's country music theology. So I had more of that upbringing. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like Christian adjacent, more so than believers type thing. So for you, were you raised in Oklahoma?
Yes. Okay. Well, okay. It's Christian adjacent too, but it's not the same as yours. It's Christian adjacent in the sense that my parents felt like they needed to take us to church. So my entire childhood, take you to church. But my dad was not an actual believer.
So it's more like a social, we got to go here because it'll be good for business?
Yeah. At one point in time, he ran for office.
Okay.
He was like the chief of staff eventually for AT&T, Southwestern Bell, AT&T, and a well-to-do guy. And, it's not wildly known, but he was also a homosexual. So closet homosexual with a wife and, large family. And so I think it was a front. And so my dad had this thing where we were always in a church, but we would be in a church for maybe 2 or 3 years and then move and be in a different church. And so that was my childhood. And the interesting thing is by the grace of God, it was always putting me in a church, but I was being raised to kind of see my dad. He had I just remember he had a big black Bible, and the big black Bible would sit on the nightstand. And then on Sunday we would go to church, and then we'd come home and sit on the nightstand. And so I was kind of raised in that sort of, we go to church is a thing, but it's a Sunday thing. And then throughout the week, my dad's not really there, So I don't grow up with the dad that throws the football or works on cars or anything, but I've got 3 brothers. So I grew up, fighting with my brothers and all that kind of stuff. But it's like a mercy of God, grace of God thing where they do have me in the church. And so I'm bumping into a lot of good influences. But we went from being Nazarenes to it was usually some form of Southern Baptist that we went to. But
and so when for you did it become kind of real? Because my mom took us to this little Church of Christ in Lawton, Oklahoma for a few years. And there was, we were baptized there because they literally were like, well, you think y'all should get baptized next week? That was the conversation. Yep. And then, I started going to a small Baptist church, in middle school or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I got radically saved when I was 15 years old. So for you, when was it no, this isn't just a place we go, but this is actually real? So
at 10, all right. So I don't want to discount what God's done because I do remember this and I do believe he began a good work. At 10, I went to Falls Creek.
Yeah.
Right. Went to Falls Creek. The message, it was, I don't know what the message was, but there was a simple sort of, though none go with me, I still will follow, come down, follow Jesus, be saved sort of thing, sort of I don't think it was easy believist, but it wasn't deep or anything. But at 10, I remember sitting in that outside pavilion. I think it's all nice now, but it was out there, hot, sweaty, playing all day, got the kick drum going and they're playing the music and there's an altar call.
Yeah.
And I did go down at 10 and, filled out the card. Jesus is God. He saved me. I'm a sinner. I realized it. Right. and then came back, got baptized in Village Baptist Church, the church that we happened to be going to at the time. And so something happened there. Like, I really do think something happened there. But at 15, 16, like most young men, all I'm doing is trying to chase girls, play basketball. Like, my entire life is like playing basketball and trying to hook up with chicks. That's and not really chicks. I wasn't like promiscuous or anything, but like to get a girlfriend and stuff. But, in like a fell swoop, I, mess up my ankle, lose my girlfriend. I think we were starting to make out a lot, and I like wrote something down on like a note or love note or something. Like, my mom found it, like got busted. Yeah. It was a good thing. This is weird. I've never really told this story publicly, but a lot of stuff fell apart in my life, and I was in this kind of like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not going to be the NBA basketball player, which you look at me now and you're like, no, dude, you were never going to be.
Hey, but you were when you're 13 shooting in your driveway.
I was, and I wasn't bad, but I was not going to be that. I was, it's kind of like, what am I doing? And I ended up kind of shifting out of the basketball thing into studio art at my, high school. And I was pretty lost, pretty just not loner kid, but, I didn't have a dad, and I had these brothers, and because all of my brothers, we didn't have dads. I think we're just kind of all over the place. And it was almost kind of like being raised by wolves, but I had a house, but there was a lot of freedom. And so with a lot of freedom came a lot of stupidity, I think. But had a youth minister that I told, hey man, I really love Narnia and I want to die and go to Narnia. And he was like, you know what you like about Narnia? I don't remember too much about what he said, but he's like, you know what you like about Narnia? It's Aslan, and he's based on Jesus. And you like C.S. Lewis, he wrote Narnia. He also wrote Mere Christianity. And I was like, what? And he's like, books for adults. And I wasn't like by any means like real heady or philosophical. I was a basketball player, but I read some C.S. Lewis. There's a little section in Mere Christianity where he talks about reading the New Testament. And I was like, okay, pause. I read the Gospels. And it was kind of like, yeah, that thing that I believed at 10, it turns out that, no, I actually do believe that, like in my mind, but I'm not really walking in that. I'm not really following him, like all these different characters in the Gospels that like follow him. And so I, got down on my hands and knees next to the bed and prayed and started following Christ there. And so that thing at 10 to sort of crisis, at 17 is, not your traditional when you got saved. You meet some people that are like, it needs to be a specific date. And I'm wondering, it's either this date or it's this date.
Right, it's either this date or this date. And then in between, there's maybe a little bit of delayed sanctification because you're a knucklehead. And you had no discipleship.
Knucklehead. And I would say even, discipleship less, not good family, that sort of thing. And then even from 17 on, there's a certain sense where I want to say that sanctification has been faithful on his part, but it's been necessary the whole time. So, I got starts and stops like all throughout there. But I tend to believe that what he did at 10 was kind of hold on to me and do something. And everything that's happened after that has been connected to that. So I don't want to discount what the Spirit of God did at 10.
Well, and so, but so it's kind of similar because, I get saved at 15 and get baptized. And, because the reason why I started going to First Baptist West in Lawton, Oklahoma in middle school was because that is where all the best looking girls from my school went to. Right. Yeah. And so I needed to be there in case something needed to be moved or something, anything needed to happen. And so, because I'm a servant at heart, you see. And so the thing that was interesting is, and this is really why Undaunted.Life started, is because I'm learning like, I got to figure out what this whole Christian thing is. Like, what does it mean to be a Christian? And I'm 15. And so I'm also trying to figure out what does it mean to be a man?
Right.
And so in my infinite wisdom as a 15-year-old, I just came to the conclusion that those are just separate things. Right. So men are outside the church doing man stuff, like killing animals, getting in fistfights, drinking beer, chasing women, like,
church guys strong. Are just being.
Yeah. Church guys like touch you when they talk to you, and like their shirts are always tucked in even when it's not necessary. And like, it's just, these just couldn't be the same people. And that didn't really change for me until my early 20s, whenever I kind of start, reading the New Testaments for myself. And I'm like, man, this Jesus fella seemed like a, pretty rough Middle Eastern construction worker. Like he didn't seem like this wispy haired Danish guy that
doesn't remind you of anyone you see at church, right?
No. And then, also then you read Wild at Heart and you're given kind of a different plausibility structure for what a man could be and what could look like.
Okay.
And I mean, Wild at Heart came out in like 2001 and didn't sell really at all for like the first 3 years.
Yeah, it had a
right.
late
So I kind of like a delayed thing, but same thing. I had no discipleship. No one was training me. And so I just go to the salt cellar in Lawton, Oklahoma, and I go buy the Teen Extreme Bible, right? Because it was the coolest looking Bible.
Yeah, cool cover.
And then you just start like reading through it on your own. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what things mean. You don't know if you're allowed to look at things outside the Bible to explain the Bible. You don't know if that's against the rules, and you're too afraid to ask. And so like for you kind of have this delayed sanctification process of 7 years. And then, 17, it's kind of like, okay, we're getting serious time. But that also coincides with, all right, we're about to be out of high school. Like, so what, where did your education go from there? Where did your, process of being a disciple of Jesus go from there?
Yeah. So, and honestly, it's continuous, because I see like the hand of God, like providence through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because when I stopped being, a jock, which every time I say that, I think that people think that's not possible.
It's possible. You never know.
It's like, dude, you're not okay. I was playing point guard. Okay. But
no, you know what I will say? I saw a guy yesterday that I know for a fact is one of the most dangerous human beings physically that I've seen. Young kid, 18 years old, and he's in church and he's got khakis on, a polo shirt, glasses. No, and I'm like, if people knew, because his face isn't messed up, he doesn't have cauliflower ear or anything like that. But I was like, he is the walking epitome as an 18-year-old of you don't go sticking your finger in anybody's chest because you just have no idea. But the same thing derivative when you look at someone, you're like, you're not a baller. And then like they toss a ball and say post up. It's like, oh, dang it. I'm about to get embarrassed in front of all my friends. So yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. But I'm not good like that anymore. So no, don't be challenging me to any game.
I might have a ball here in this room. We might have a hoop. Okay. Anyway.
Well, don't film it.
Yeah.
But it changed my trajectory so much. And that's why I'm no good now, because I just kind of like left it behind.
Yeah.
And because I had kind of dabbled in drawing, the last 2 hours of the school, the way it was set up with block scheduling, if you were like on a basketball team or something like that, you had basketball at the end of school. And I was
give you an extra hour of practice every day. Yeah.
And I wasn't going to just sit there with my busted ankle and just watch them play. And so, by the time I came back, I probably wouldn't really have a spot anymore and all that kind of stuff. So I was just like, I was kind of depressed about it. And so I was like, you know what? I'll find whatever's open. And the school counselor was like, well, we've got this studio art, but it's like art 4. It's like for people who've already had art 1, 2, and 3. And, but if you talk to that guy and he'll let you in, you can be in that class. He did not let me in. He was like, no, like whatever. And I was like,
it's like kids who never played basketball asking to be on varsity. Yeah. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And it makes sense on his part. But the class that did let me in shared like a quad with it. And it was like a home ec class. And I sat in that home ec class and I just doodled the whole time. This is public school education. You can just sit.
Yeah, just do whatever.
Do whatever. So I'm like, well, he like 2 weeks into the semester or whatever sees like my doodle. He kind of stops and he goes, that's not that bad. Okay, let me see a portfolio. I showed him a number of drawings and stuff that I'd done. And he was like, yeah, no, sure, you're in. And so he did move me into this studio art class. And then, so that's just like junior year. And then my senior year, I don't know what happened. I just went total art nerd. I went from like making fun of art nerds to being an art nerd. Yeah. And was like, every single elective that I could do was in, physical arts. And put together a portfolio, won like young art or young talent in Oklahoma or some kind of contest thing. They got me before OU people. They looked at my portfolio, and then I accepted to the University of Oklahoma to start in their painting program, their art thing. A little boring, but went to OU to do art with a scholarship, and it was good because my grades weren't that great. I don't think my SATs or whatever were good enough to get into school. Get into art, doing art. But of course, what God did when I was 17, I got real philosophical and real. I started reading like everything C.S. Lewis wrote. I started reading all of Francis Schaeffer. And Francis Schaeffer was just so, worldview, art, like the Christian worldview ought to have a great say onto what you're expressing artistically. And so I took a lot of that very seriously. And so all of my artwork that, in the way art school is, you paint something and you put it up, and then the whole class like gathers around and then they critique it.
Yep.
They're all like, what is this one about? Oh, this one's about how evolution's a myth and abortion's murder. Yeah. Homosexuality is a sin and Islam is a demonic lie. And it's just like day in, week in and week out, whenever I'd put my paintings up in front of the class, it was just like a debate room. And so I had this art teacher who kind of got fed up with it. She's passed, Louise Jones at OU. And she was like, hey, is there any way that you can maybe take a philosophy class as an elective to kind of get some of this? Because I was just in
get
there.
It out of your system.
I'm like setting up. I'm like, all right, everybody, here's my painting, and I made sure that it was good, like quality art.
Sure.
And so this is me learning. This is like God doing something. Because that's what I do today. Like people know me for the YouTube stuff, but all the abolitionist material, all the art that's involved in it's mine. And so not all of it, but a lot of it. And so I would set up these paintings and then have like these debate classes where you've got like, 20 art students telling you that your idea is stupid, but that your art's good. They're like, man, this is really well done, but I disagree with what you're saying here. Marx is right, And
but was it like civil, or did it get?
It was both. I think it was starting out to where that was like the first place where I was being a Christian who was like arguing with people publicly.
Yeah.
So I think it was civil in that I've always been pretty civil.
When was a different time? I mean, what years would you have been talking about?
So it's like 2000, 2001.
Okay. So, I mean, the stuff we see now on a college campus, like the story you just told doesn't even seem plausible now. That you would be in an art program to begin with and would be allowed to go past your first painting without just getting like shouted down
canceled
by somebody with purple hair and a nose ring. And
well, I mean, it was rough in that people were kind of like, they would sneer at you.
Yeah.
But honestly, going all the way back to how I was raised, I spent so much time arguing with my sort of absent dad. Like he would come in and out, and he was all moody and stuff. And I would fight with him a lot as a kid. And as a kid, I'd always think, you know what? He's actually wrong and I'm actually right. And I can beat him in all these arguments as long as I choose to argue for the right thing. I learned that very early. Like you don't lose arguments if you pick the legit answer. Like,
the right point.
The person who's arguing for something stupid loses. And yes, they can train themselves to be sophisticated and argue for untruth. But I just remember as a kid thinking, I think and then I found out as an adult, but that my dad was a liar, like pathological liar. And as a little kid, I was always like, man, I got in trouble, but I think I beat my dad in that argument. I think he was wrong. I think I was right. And I think he got all fussy and ran off to his room. And, I'm like, teenager. But anyway, so like that argument comfortableness translated into this sort of in the art room debating, 10 other students and the teacher. And it was civil enough, I think, because maybe it was a bit of a different time. It was pre-canceling, but it was civil to the point where the teacher, well, let me back up. I'm, humbly pretty good at art. So it was kind of like a cheat code. They're like looking at the painting. You look at the 10, 20 paintings in the class and you're like, one of these is better than the others, technically. And it also happens to be from the Christian guy that's pressing his worldview. So I think that helped. And I learned that there. I said, all right, because today, whenever I produce material, I want it to look very legit. So that painting teacher said, why don't you take a philosophy class, kind of work a little, some of this out of because you're basically turning every critique class into a debate. And we're not really getting to the other students, and we're not really talking about technique and art. We're talking about like evolution. And so, which was kind of like the thing I always did. sent me to a philosophy class, found the same thing in the philosophy class. Like, all these people are just arguing for nonsense, and got real into philosophy. Again, I was reading a bunch of Christian apologetics by this time. And so I'm bringing all this Christian apologetic stuff into the philosophy program. And then I think my junior year, I think the beginning of my junior year, I realized, like, you know what? Art class, I'm just drawing stuff and painting stuff and sculpting stuff. I don't really need a degree in that. Like, what am I going to do? Like, am I
Teach
really
art?
am I going to be stuck just, doing that? It's like, I'm going to shift. I mean, at one point in time, I thought I'd be an artist and, have a studio and all that kind of stuff. But I said, I can still do art on the side. I'm going to shift to philosophy, right? Which also is not something you want your...
What, are you going to teach philosophy now? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I was never thinking about
so
what
you
was
went
going
from
to pay.
art major to philosophy major?
Yeah, so I shifted to a philosophy major, and then in the philosophy classes, my go-to argument would always be historical. I'd always be like, okay, so you're saying this and you're saying this, but in history, your ideas lead to like atrocities, or your ideas lead to failures in scientific advance or something like that. So I'd make philosophical arguments that were rooted in history. And I had a philosophy professor who's like, kind of a continental analytical philosopher guy that didn't like that. He was just like, why don't you take like a history class, like on the side? Like,
keep moving you down the line.
Just move me around, man. Just move me around. But this whole time, God's, this is a long-winded way of saying, I think God's like building me. Because now, okay, so I finished philosophy undergrad with a history of science minor, and then I went on and did history of science as a master's, and it was really history and philosophy of science, But anyway, all of that from the being a jock, I think, and being not a total book nerd. And being into pop culture and stuff like that, and then becoming artsy and that's, I guess, into a lot of pop culture and everything, visual expression, then philosophy, then history. I use every single day.
Yeah,
like that's what I do. Like I create art to push an idea, and then I debate and defend that idea. But now, over the course of all this, it has been God like providentially built me up to where if I go out on the street and I'm talking to people, whether they go into history or philosophy or, just trying to be more cultural savvy and all that kind of stuff, like leave me behind because I'm the dumb Christian, I think they're running into a different kind of animal than they usually run into whenever they run into street preachers or street evangelists.
Okay, so let's go from 17 to master's degree. So you're getting this artistic foundation, this philosophical foundation, this historical foundation. Who are you reading for Christianity purposes?
Yeah.
Like, obviously I'm assuming you're reading the Old Testament and the New Testament,
Mm-hmm.
but had you gone from Lewis and Schaeffer to fill in the blank, or?
Yeah. So my main guy spiritually throughout pretty much this whole period became A.W. Tozer.
Okay.
So, and I dabbled in some things. It wasn't fully in the cards, I guess, in the divine will of God that I would stick long in the John Piper camp. But, I kind of...
You didn't want to take 8 years in Romans?
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I did, there was like desiring God was like a big thing.
Yeah.
Like whenever I was in college and stuff. And so, I kind of went off into that. But it seemed like A.W. Tozer for me was the guy that... Now,
there's some direct connections between the approaches of both of those men, but there are certainly like subtle differences, but obviously we can evaluate Piper because he's still putting out stuff right now.
Yeah.
Even though he's in his latter years. But what was it that made Tozer more your palate, flavor palette?
Okay, so I can't remember the same guy. The same guy that had put me on to Lewis had mentioned Tozer, like I'd heard that name.
Yeah.
And then another guy was I can't remember exactly what it was that he said about Tozer, some kind of quote in some kind of sermon or something like that. And I was like, yeah, that's what I need. And it seemed more like what I needed was some kind of a non-charismatic, but still Holy Spirit is active in your life Christianity. And that you were really not just learning about the holiness of God, but it was transforming your life. And so I found Tozer to be the sort of thing that if I were reading Tozer, my weeks where I was in that and in the Word were more holy, were more focused.
Okay.
And so I kind of exhausted Tozer, though. I kind of like ran through the through the canon, and then I can't remember what year it was.
And he didn't really write a lot of tomes, so it wasn't like you were getting into Richard Bachman,
Yeah, no.
History of the Eyewitnesses, and it's like 800 pages or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, because like Francis Schaeffer was a presuppositional-ish type guy and had built a Christian worldview, and from that Christian worldview, you could kind of assess things on your own. My apologetical reading started going almost entirely reading atheist and agnostic. So I, would read, well,
that was the rise of the Four Horsemen.
The Four Horsemen, yep. All that, and a lot of Richard Dawkins, and so Dan Dennett and all them. But I would read a lot of anti-Christian stuff, and I found that just knowing God, knowing the Word, knowing the stuff that I'd picked up from Schaeffer and Lewis, I feel like Lewis can destroy all those guys. I wrote so long ago, and I still think all his stuff destroys all their stuff. And so I stopped probably around the middle of my college years. I really stopped reading Christian apologetics, which is no knock on reading Christian apologetics, but like, hey, Ravi Zacharias has got a new book. It's like, okay, well, maybe I'll read that. And there were a lot of people reading like William Lane Craig and Norm Geisler and all those kind of guys. And I don't really want to throw too much shade on them because I think they have a place. But for me, it was always, I was being very introspective and thinking like my belief and understanding of God is not really based on evidence.
Hey guys, real quick. So you're there, you're in a small town, you've been invited over to someone's house for dinner. You walk through the kitchen and you get that smell, the smell of home cooking. You go to the back porch where they're grilling or smoking meat and you get that smell, and then you get the taste. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, guys. It tastes incredible. The flavors are big and bold. It feels like home and it feels like happiness, right? Well, you try to pull that same thing off at your house, but all you have in your cabinet are some random seasonings from the store, right? And many of these big companies just make bland blends, and we all know this by now. Bland blends lead to bland food, and bland food leads to a bad food experience. And I don't want you guys to have any bad food experiences. That's why I want to remind you about my friends at G's Seasoning. G's Seasoning is a small, family-owned and operated seasoning company from a small town in rural Texas. The recipe for their flagship all-purpose seasoning has been passed down in their family, and now they're passing it on to you. And I've used G's all-purpose seasoning on beef, pork, wild game. It's really, really awesome on elk, by the way. Chicken, fish, eggs, veggies, and yes, the daddy hack of all daddy hacks, popcorn. And also, I'm super, super pumped for this. They have a brand new seasoning out now, salt and pepper blend. So it's a classic seasoning duo, right? But G's has leveled it up. So G's salt and pepper blend uses 2 different grains of top shelf flake salt and 2 different grinds of hand-cracked black pepper to give you the bold flavor you're looking for. And I've used it so far on brisket and burgers, and dude, amazing. So throw out all of your bland big box store seasonings. Support a small town American family business by going to gsseasoning.com. That's gsseasoning.com. And guys, if you're looking for a stocking stuffer for this Christmas season, these bottles fit really well into your average stocking. So guys, get a case of them. Give them out to all your family members. Give them out to all the people at the office. Again, that's gsseasoning.com. That's golfsierraseasoning.com. Order today. Well, and also if you're really deep into Christian apologetics, which I really like Christian apologetics as well, what it can turn into, and don't hear what I'm not saying, guys, I'm not saying don't study it, is you're preparing yourself for a fight that you're never actually going to have. So for a lot of these people, they're not sharing the gospel at all, or apologetics becomes their Bible. And so they're just taking what Ravi or William Lane Craig or one of those people, Greg Kokel, they're taking what they have to say about scripture and then trying to apply it to a potential future conversation that doesn't normally come to pass. And so, like, I'm pro learning all, because we have to be able to give an apologia for all the things that we believe, like, yes, for sure. But it's like, bro, you're biblically illiterate. You are Christian apologetics literate, which is great, but you're biblically illiterate. And so if someone takes you back to the text, right? Like, who's the new guy? He's kind of he's the English guy. He's young. He kind of looks like he's 12 with a mustache.
Yeah, I see him pop up on YouTube.
I think he's fantastic.
He's like a skeptic guy, but he's kind of reasonable.
Yeah, and he's gone from atheism to agnostic now because
I think I saw a video from him like a week ago, something about Christianity may be more serious.
Is it Alex O'Connor? Is that something like, anyway, we're yelling in the comments right now. But, a guy like that, he's going to be a guy that says, great, let's go to your text. And then if you don't have any familiarity with your own text,
like, oh, I'm sorry, William Lane Craig didn't talk about this.
Right. He doesn't even need to take out your worldview because you don't even know the text that that you're espousing, right? That you're purporting to defend. And so, so if you go too far down the Christian apologetics rabbit hole, and it's like, look, you're not Frank Turek. You're not going to be doing this for a living. You're not going to get invited to debate Sam Harris. So it's like, hey, let's kind of go a different direction. It seemed like you figured that out pretty quick.
Yeah, no, I think what it was is I found, honestly, like, and not arrogantly, like, I found that there was a certain amount, once you understood, you could do it on your own. You could assess. Like, I didn't need someone to point out how defective, chance variation and natural selection were over and over and over and over again. Like, whatever, fossil species that was being put forward as a transitional form, I was going to be able to debunk that. Like, I was going to be able to look at it. Like, I understood what was wrong with the mechanism of evolution. At a certain point, I didn't have to buy whatever the next intelligent design book was, which in a certain sense, I think you should do that. You should keep yourself
But their arguments aren't evolving.
But
that's the issue. It's the same stuff.
And it just was the same
way for
book.
hundreds of years.
Yeah. And a lot of stuff with the arguments for the existence of God. And then the other thing, and I think this is significant, I don't think I see this very often. People want to talk about, like, the existence of God. Like, if you're doing evangelism that's leading you to apologetics, you're doing evangelism on a college campus, they want to talk about the existence of God, like the problem of evil and evolution, right? They want to go to these things. I found that I do believe they know God exists.
That's in Romans.
They do. They're denying it. They know they're sinners. They know they've got sin in their life, and they hate the idea of God because they think he's going to not just punish them for their sin, but take away their sin, like make them no longer slave to it. And so they know this, and I know they know this, and they want to run off and talk about, like, Aquinas's 5 ways or whatever. No.
It's a distraction.
I start just zeroing in on, hey, what particular sin is it that you are carrying out in your life that's keeping you from admitting that God is God, and because that's what it was for me. I mean, I knew that God was God, and I had to yield. Like, it wasn't, I mean, even though I was reading Mere Christianity, it was, I was seeing everything through that lens that Lewis was constructing about the moral law and all that. But it wasn't like here, let me show you all these evidences for the resurrection. Now, I think there's tons of evidence for the resurrection, and I think it's good that we have that.
You just took it as a given, and then just explaining from it.
Just like I think I know Jesus, and I don't think it's because of what's in this Gary Habermas book, but good to know that stuff. So I began kind of, at that point, reading less traditional sort of like answers books, reading more just Bible. And this is kind of where the abolitionism comes from, because at about this time when I was in my 3rd year in graduate school, so a master's degree in like the history of science, because you have like foreign languages and all this kind of stuff, it can take you 4 years. And I'm in my 3rd year, and I start, this is bad for my academic career, because I start reading the prophets, and I'm like looking at the prophets, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, major and minor. And I'm like, man, the way they're doing this and what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it is different. It's a lot different. And their focus is a lot less on the world and a lot more on the people of God. And so that begins to be like a plague in my mind. Like I'm thinking about debating these bad atheists. Like these atheists need to get saved. And I'm not even really looking at the church and whether or not we are following the Lord as King. And so that's planted, and I'm doing that. And then that's where I'm at in my biblical studies, reading a lot of prophets. And of course you got, a lot of civil disobedience in there with like Daniel and all that kind of stuff. And so that's happening. And then academically, I'm doing a history of science, Darwin, Asa Gray, Darwinian theory coming to America and all this kind of stuff. A book comes out. It's all about how, Darwin was motivated to fight racism with his theory. It's a made up thesis that's becoming popular because the intelligent design community has started publishing Richard Weichardt's thesis that Darwin and Hitler, the worldviews, there's a connection. And so this book, Darwin's Sacred Cause, comes out, and there's an argument in there that he was motivated to fight slavery, and that's why he put forward the Origin of Species and the Descent of Man. And I'm like, this is fishy. I think this is fishy. This is lunatic. So I'll go read The Abolitionist to see if any of these abolitionists of slavery are Darwinians. And of course, none of them are. It's like a totally different worldview. It's man's made in the image of God. Darwin's main thesis, and the thing I was writing in my dissertation, was that Darwin is out to prove that man's not made in the image of God.
Right.
And so I get into these abolitionists of slavery. I'm looking at the lives of, the William Wilberforces and the William Lloyd Garrisons, and I'm like, I'm so not like these guys. Like, these guys were prophetic to their culture. They looked at their culture's evil practices. They looked at the way they were tolerated among, the religious, and they rebuked and they sought to correct oppression and establish justice and equality and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, and they loved their neighbors who were being mistreated. And so reading the prophets, reading all this kind of stuff, everything that had come before just kind of like zeroed in and was like, bing. And I could not, miss the abortion thing. Like who, okay, if I want to be like these guys, what neighbor in my culture is the neighbor that's being oppressed, the neighbor that's being, mistreated and murdered, essentially? That's the preborn. And this whole, we've talked this whole time, abortion's not come up. Abortion's not been a part of anything in my life. There's, Sanctity of Life Sundays, there's pro-life, marches, there's all this different stuff that's happening, but never at any point was I into like pro-life apologetics. So I was completely dry on that. But I realized, okay, I live in a culture that legally terminates human beings en masse, and all the arguments for that seem to be identical to the arguments being made by oppressors in all past, cultures. Like, oh, okay, all right, God, I yield. I'll do that. And then from that moment on, it was go to the coffee shop or the office or whatever, open my laptop to work on my dissertation, or open my laptop to work on the abolition of human abortion. And I rarely ever clicked that dissertation thing again.
So did you end up finishing your dissertation?
No, I did not.
I know another guy who got 95% of the way through his doctorate and was just like, I'm never going to do this. Like, he thought he wanted to be university president until his dissertation on university presidents was like, man, this seems terrible. I don't want to do this. And then he went to oil and gas. And so and
made a lot more money.
It's the most Oklahoma thing. Oklahoma story is like, you always got to do some oil and gas. But it is interesting because I get asked a lot like, hey, why do you care so much about the abortion topic? And the people that are not intellectually honest, or they're trying to get at me, they either think that I've forced someone to get an abortion, or that, maybe my mom tried to abort me and all that. And I'm like, no, I just don't like bullies. And when I grew up, like as a kid, I was kind of an in-betweener.
Very
like
much.
I was big enough to bully some kids, but not big enough to not get bullied by other people. And I was a redheaded ginger with really dark freckles, and I was overweight until about 9th grade.
Didn't have a soul.
Dude, still don't. And so like that's part of the issue is so I'm learning how to get out of situations. Grew up kind of in a rough area, you know, got knives pulled on me walking home from school. Like, so it's like I had to use my humor to get into and out of situations. Like, you know, I had to use kind of my hustle to, you know, get into and out of situations and stuff like that. But just as I grew up in the faith, it's just like, wait a minute, like nobody would be cool with people going around like killing 2-year-olds at the park. But if it's like, you know, 8 weeks of gestation in the womb, like they're less human. And I'm the same way. All of these arguments that I help people deal with today, I had never heard any of them. It just never even occurred to me that somebody would think that that was okay. And it wasn't because Republicans shifted and made that one of their main issues. It wasn't because, you know, Christians, you know, Protestants were following the Catholics' lead and kind of getting more into the pro-life space or whatever argument you want to make. It was just like, well, you know, that's a person though, right? Yeah. And so it never occurred to me that at no point along the gestational period that they weren't a person. Like it just, and then so that's kind of how I got into it. And then when you formalize it with a podcast or with different things, okay, now we're looking into the arguments. Okay, here's what people say. Here's how to defeat it. Here's questions to ask that make the worldview fall to pieces. They're going to move the goalposts. Okay, here's how to deal with when they move it over here. And when you do that, then you get into Socratic method, you get into questioning strategy, you get into the Sandler language system, which was all about asking questions so you could sell life insurance. And so it's like, I got exposed to all those different things as well, which helped me fight on this particular issue, because there's certain things that are just so clear, because for people now to even make the claim that it's just a clump of cells, it's ignorant in about 49 different ways.
On every science, faith, religion, philosophy, history, everything that you look at, it's problematic. And that's why, like, I don't think that I'm particularly the most intelligent person on the planet or anything like that, but I never lose any argument about this because I'm debating people who are debating something that's just so categorically false on every front.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to be at odds with science. They're going to be at odds with logic. They're going to be at odds with experience. They're going to be at odds with their own rhetoric, like their own talk about empathy, because we've all been there.
Sure.
Like all this kind of stuff. So
we're all walking contradictions in one way or another. But the best thing, you know, if we're supposed to love our neighbor, one of the best things we can do is we can gently lead our neighbor to their own fallacious arguments. Hold up a mirror and be like, so just so I can, I just want to make sure me in an intellectually honest fashion, I want to try to reword what I think you're saying back to you.
Yeah, so they can hear it.
Yes, and get your affirmative or your denial of what I've just said, and then watch them stand by it. And then some people will hear it said out loud and they're like, oh, that sounds kind of evil. That sounds kind of genocidal. And then at that point they have kind of, so I do a lot in the jiu-jitsu space. I've been training jiu-jitsu for a long time. It's the same thing that happens when someone trains for the first time, especially if they were an athlete, especially if they were a high-level athlete.
They got to unlearn a bunch of stuff.
Well, they come in, and it just doesn't matter how fast their 40 was or how they could jump. They're going to get mauled. There's not a scenario where they don't get beat.
I've consistently heard that jiu-jitsu is like a humbling thing for everybody.
It has to be. Yeah. And here's the thing, like we've had a couple of NFL players, former NFL players come through our gym. And so when you come in, and I thought my buddy Isaac Tuefa, he runs Jesus in Jiu-Jitsu. He's one of the guys that runs that, you know, D lineman, you know, bench press champion at UTEP, like just solid. And he's the smallest of all of his brothers. And he's like 6 foot tall, like 300 pounds, just.
Oh, to be huge and to be the smallest of your brothers.
And so, and he goes into a gym like that and he gets mauled by a guy that's about 160 pounds. Like he's literally double the guy's size.
Knows the technique.
Way more athletic. And it's just, none of that matters. And so when that happens to you, and to all of us that have stuck with jiu-jitsu, it's happened to all of us. When it happens to you, you have two options. You walk out, pretend like that never happened. You cover your eyes, plug your ears, and you just pretend like, you know what? If that wasn't a real fight, if that were a real fight, I'd see red and bodies would just start to drop. And none of that's actually true.
Doesn't seem like a good way to respond to that.
Or you take the other path and you go, I need to learn this. I did not realize I was that helpless in a fight against somebody that was trained. I thought, like most men do, walking around, I'm fine. If something physical goes down, I played football. Well, you don't have pads and a helmet on, and it's not third down.
Yeah,
like
there's not a referee sitting there.
Yeah, this is real life, and I'm holding you down against your will, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so it's kind of the same thing with what you're doing whenever you do this stuff on the street, and we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves just a little bit. But
yeah,
I think it's important. You're taking people to a point where they have to make a decision. Am I going to stick with the thing that I know to not be true so I don't look like a fool?
Yep.
Or do I embrace the fact I got exposed for a fool, and now I'm going to work my way towards that never being a thing anymore for, I want to be disabused of my ignorance.
Yeah.
But for you, okay, so you decide like this abortion thing is going to be a thing, but how does it become like a thing? Because it's one thing to realize it while you're working on your dissertation, and it's another thing to where you are today, where you're on college campuses, making people engage on the topic.
Yeah, there's a ton there. First off, let me just say, have you ever had a guy come on a podcast and do the real sensible thing and use the restroom before they start talking?
Yeah, and then use it in the middle as well.
And then need to use it in the middle.
Well, see, that's why I've got this little magic pad here.
I
write myself a note.
I almost thought I was going to grab your pad and be like, hey, while you were talking, he was like, dude, I got to use the restroom so bad.
This is a great time for me to do ad. So Jocko Hydrate actually worked on this one.
Hydrated me like.
By the magic of editing, he's going to go to the bathroom and then he'll be right back. There you go. Magic of editing. Hopefully, Landon, you got like a cool little graphic that you put in there, because I think the last person to do this was Matt Chandler, and he had like a really cool like edit that took us out there. So it'll be a nice little Choco drink that comes out there. But basically what we were talking about is, okay, it's one thing to be sitting there in the coffee shop realizing this dissertation sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do the abolition stuff. Okay, the subject matter and focus is going to be the unborn. Okay. Well, I don't know how long the road is from that point to kind of what you're doing today, but let's kind of, put some detail on that.
Yeah. So, man, let me tell you, we didn't put this detail here, but I am a doctoral candidate in the history of science at the University of Oklahoma. My committee,
technically to this day, could you pick it back? Okay, I didn't know if you could pick it back up.
Well, actually, whenever I left, they did say something like that, but I think I've let it expire.
Probably severed that at this point.
Yes, they. I've still got some friends there. Actually,
all right,
maybe we'll talk about that. But okay, in that, and I'm writing my dissertation's on like the metaphysical foundations of Darwin's Descent of Man. So I'm like deep in what the history of science in the Darwin industry. Like these are like all the people that just crank out.
Yeah, true believers.
Like Darwin stuff. And I've got like all the volumes of Darwin's letters. Like I am deep in it. And I'm writing this thing. I'm friends with, like the famous, not friends, but, like I'm associating with and doing talks with and, getting, famous Darwinians, like the Richard Dawkins and that sort of person is coming through the university, knows my main chair, Piers Hell at the university. And he's a nice guy, and he's an atheist, and he's a Darwinian, and he knows I'm a Christian, but I'm at this point when this all happens because I'm kind of that mindset of keep your head down, get your degree, and then, kind of be a little more bold in your Christianity later. Which is, I think, bad. A lot of people do that, and I've seen
there's a utility to it, but it's super circumstantial, like to wherever anecdotally you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen guys do that, and then they're like, "Well, I'm going to keep my head down until I get tenure."
Yeah,
and I'm going to keep my head down, and then whenever it's time that they can put their head up, they're like, "Man, I've just been doing this so long, and I can't do anything."
Got to keep it going.
And I had a guy like that. I'm not going to out him, but I had a guy like that on my dissertation. Knows I'm a Christian. And then I have, so the guys on my thesis, my, whatever you call them, my academic guides, I've got, a secular humanist, an outright atheist, a closet kind of Christian guy, and then another agnostic atheist type person. And then off, atheists somewhere else. And those are the people that I am writing for and working with. And I'm going to the history of science conferences and giving talks. And they're all about Darwinism and Asa Gray and coming to America and all this kind of stuff. When this happened in my life and I was going to have to go in and kind of give an update on where the dissertation was. And I was kind of stalling out because I lost my passion for it.
Yeah.
And I was doing as much or maybe more historical research, but it was all 19th century abolitionist of slavery. Because by the time I fell in love with like what was going on in America and the debates about how we would end chattel slavery, whether it would destroy the country if we did it immediately, whether it needed to be gradual, whether the Constitution was pro-slavery. I was getting into all that kind of stuff, which was very far away. Now, but luckily, it's happening at the same time as my dissertation. So I can kind of be like, there's a chapter in my dissertation that deals with this claim that Darwin was an abolitionist. And they're like, yeah, but it's clear that that's where I'm at. I'm just reading that stuff almost solely and entirely. So I'm not fooling anyone. So I eventually, I got outed. I can't remember what happened. Let me back it just a little bit. I decide while I'm in the department, while I'm writing my dissertation, on the side, I will create a different Facebook account with a different name, and I'm going to use it to sort of put these ideas out about the abolitionist view on abortion. Because I went and I read all this pro-life stuff. I went and read all the sort of the Randy Alcorns, the Scott Klusendorfs, all of those guys. And I read them. And the problem is when I was studying the pro-life movement, because I was going to get involved. I was going to love my preborn neighbor as myself. I was going to fight for justice. And I was like, okay, let's do this. How are the Christians doing it? And I went and I read all those guys. And the arguments they were making and the foundations that they were building their whole project on were incredibly similar, identical to the anti-slavery moderates that were always fighting the abolitionist. And so I was seeing this in my academic studies, like that back in the day, there were like people that were like total immediate abolition of slavery because it's a national sin and it's going to bring us under the judgment of God. And if we don't repent of it, there's going to be a war, like in the 1830s. And I'm like, I think those guys were right. Obviously, history has shown those guys were right, but they were an extreme minority. What were the majority of people in the North doing? Well, regulate the chattel slavery system, make it better for slaves, get plantation owners to choose to freely manumit and pay their, like all this kind of stuff. And don't call it sin. Don't call it a crime. Don't call for like total abolition. That's too dangerous. All that kind of stuff. And I was reading that historically, just I'd say not by chance, but by providence. And then I'm like, well, I need to love my preborn neighbor as myself. And I come and I read the pro-lifers and they're saying all the exact same things. And I'm like, not to speak totally ill of them. They're just doing what good people at that time were doing before the emergence of abolitionists. And so, I'm doing this historical thing and this personal thing. And on this, I'm like, I've got to do something. I got to start like an abolitionist group or something. I've got to love my my office at the university is like a literal mile away from the Child Sacrifice Center in Norman. And the church I go to is 2 miles from the Child Sacrifice Center, the abortion clinic. And like a coffee shop I go to is near it. And I'm like, man, I am day in and day out when I go to my office to drink my lattes and write my dissertation, there are mothers and fathers taking their babies to be murdered. And I'm doing nothing. So I start to feel not just unlike the prophets, not just unlike these historical giants that I'm coming to admire, but I'm just not feeling manly or Christian or worth anything. And so I'm like, Callie, I know about this evil. I'm reading these pro-lifers. I'm seeing these pictures of abortion. I'm just like, okay, I got to do something. So on the side, using a pseudonym, I begin organizing an abolitionist society at the local church. And, you have to do, this is like at the early days of Facebook. So you have to, everything's going up online. We're all starting to publish our entire worlds. So I've got my academic, I'm a Christian, but you don't have to worry about me because I'm kind of keeping it under wraps. And then I got this guy, Ian John Philoponus. That's just
what? What's the name again?
Ian John Philoponus, right?
How in the world do you come with that?
Is there
a story behind that?
Yeah, there's this ancient.
We're here.
Early
you got to
Christian,
tell a story.
All right, ancient, like early Christian philosopher named Philoponus, who had made all these sort of like Craig's Kalam cosmological argument.
Of course, yeah.
That like can actually be traced back to the Kalam school, but then predating that to this guy named Philoponus, who, yeah.
Okay.
It's just a cool name.
Yeah.
Like whether his name was Philoponus or not, but he was like this early Christian philosopher, but he was also kind of like, I don't use this word derogatorily, like kind of social justice, possible connections there.
Okay.
And then there was this other guy,
Snuffleupagus. Was that the other guy?
Athenagoras.
Yeah. Okay,
actually.
yeah. Close.
Snuffleupagus was their pet.
Got it.
But Athenagoras, and I almost went with Athenagoras, but he was a little more well known and did clear.
Yeah, of course, everyone knows him. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's super well known. You know, Wes Huff, you know him.
Yeah, he would.
But like these guys, I was kind of reading them on the side, like for stuff. But anyway, the Ian John, I can't remember. We had this group and we wanted to call ourselves the Ians. This is like sort of silly, but Ians.
Okay.
We were informed and not silent or something like that. Yeah.
All right. I'm glad that didn't stick, but we all have good ideas in the moment.
We got bad branding in the past. You got to work it all out.
Yeah.
But I think that was stupid and that didn't go anywhere, but that was from early on in college or something. And so I kept the Ian from that. And then I think I needed something alliterate like Ian John Philip. So anyway,
okay. Got it.
I create the Facebook page and I'm just pumping out like anti-abortion memes that I think are rightly radical. Like they're true to the fact that abortion is murder. A lot of the pro-life stuff was like pink and blue balloons and babies and butterflies. Like it's like an eagle carrying a baby that's born wrapped in an American flag, with butter.
We've all seen it. Yeah.
And so I'm like, and Facebook is like, we're now allowed to post images. So I'm like, kind of, this is, this period I'm doing white Helvetica on black, whatever, early posters, abolitionist thing. And so I'm cranking this stuff out into the Facebook world. And then at Trinity Baptist Church in Norman, it's a church where the pastor and the associate pastor are both big into apologetics and philosophy and theology and debate and all this kind of stuff. And they're always like, go out there and engage the culture. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to do abolitionism the way these old abolitionists did it. They were very forthright with their beliefs about God. And I was like looking at the pro-lifers, they kind of push that back a little bit, kind of like, well, I'm religious, I believe in God, but you don't have to. Like these people were like concerned about whether or not God was on their side. And so I was like, I'm going to make this ultra theological, unashamed, biblical abortion is murder. It should be criminalized thing. And I'm going to do it because it's going on right next to me. Those are my neighbors. And these laws are offending my God. I'm going to be salt and light. So I start a little group in that church while still enrolled, and I'm like living a double life, and I'm trying to keep that all secret from my atheistic professors.
Now, did you do the whole like pseudonym thing? Because this sounds very much so like what Katie Faust did. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a children's rights advocate. Came on the show, earlier. She's spectacular. But at first she was, stay-at-home mom, pastor's wife, like really kind of low key. And so she created this separate account. And she actually, if you fast forward, she got doxxed by this like LGBTQ activist who like said who it was. And in this moment, she actually, like a really solid Christian woman, she went to the elders of her church, said, this is what I've been doing. This is has happened. This is why I did it from the beginning.
Superhero identity.
Right. And what should I do? And they said, lean into this. Like, this is what you've done. This is, this could be a very good thing for you. Like, we will protect you. We'll support you. Like, like what a good elder would do. And, so it's very similar, but for her thing, like she says that she was intellectually chicken. She didn't want to post as Katie Faust because, all the, the whispers you get in your ear, like, hey, you're just a stay-at-home mom. You're nothing. You don't have the philosophical chops that all these other people do. Who are you to speak into culture in this way and say that we should advocate for kids? And it's not just abortion and things like that. It's like anti-divorce. It's like no one ever, it's the adults thinking about their own personal happiness.
Can't even touch in a church.
Yeah. And it's like adults are worried about their own happiness. We really don't care about the negative outcomes that there are for kids. But she did the exact same thing you did. So like, why not just post as Russell Hunter?
Yeah. So one, everyone at the church knew, like I was doing this like with these like.
So it's like a writer with a pen name at your church, at least. They knew who was writing.
It's not totally secret.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I don't even know if the account may still be up. I might be locked out of it.
So what was it? Ian Snuffleupagus?
Yes.
Or something? Yeah. I think just spell it. Yeah, we'll find it. Just sound it out, guys.
John Floppin. And it's like it's like this painting of this like hooded philosopher, right? And it's like, you see the nose bridge. He looks like he's from like Assassin's Creed or something.
Yeah.
So he's got this cloak.
Little like a philosopher that's also in the Knights Templar a little bit.
Yeah. And then the AHA symbol, abolish human abortion. We can get into that later. But like it like up above his head. And what I was doing was I was making these posters on 11 by 17. I was printing them out and we were like plastering them all over campus and all over Norman. Just like kind of doing sort of somewhat silly, but kind of like street art, what's the name? The kind of the street artist that was blown up at that time, like Shepard Fairey. We were like Obey Giant type stuff, like putting all this junk up. And there was not a huge stir, but kind of a small stir on campus. Like they would just be like statements. And then this abolitionist symbol, like culture will be judged by how it treats its weakest members, AHA symbol. And it wasn't really clear what it was about.
What does AHA stand for again?
So abolish human abortion.
Got it.
So it's like an A, upwards A, two I's that make an H, and then an
you
upside
show the camera
down.
right there. That'll be where it goes right there. So
abolish,
you kind of see it. There you go.
Yeah. So it's basically the two I's, image of God, incarnation of Christ. The value of humans are wrapped up in our being image bearers and recipients of the incarnation. And then you have the higher law, which is to turn lower unjust laws right side up so you can flip the thing.
Okay.
So abolish human abortion. So I had made, because those abolitionists in Britain had the am I not a man and a brother symbol, which was the slave on bended knee with the am I not a man and a brother. That was them putting the incarnation in the image of God into their symbol. It was an illustration at that time. Iconography was illustration. And so at my time, it wasn't. It's, just lines. And so I was like, I want to do the same thing that they did. They started making these arguments. They started putting a symbol with it. They started flooding the culture. They started popularizing their movement. And I was like, I'm going to mimic them, but I'm going to do it with modern trappings. So I just started doing that. But the Ian John Philoponus was supposed to protect me from my professors finding out.
Yeah.
Because this had happened. And in a certain sense, I had got religion, I was a Christian. I was serious about it, but I was total ivory tower Christian. I was going to keep my head down, do my dissertation, get tenure. I was on that track. And I knew some people like in the intelligent design world. I'd done I don't know if you're familiar with like the Discovery Institute.
Yeah. We've had some folks from there on the show.
Yeah. So I had done an intern, like a summer program thing with them. And I was keeping that kind of secret because even though I was studying Darwinism, I was not at all persuaded or convinced of Darwinism or even a Christian version of it. I was just like, no, this is vacuous and empty. This is like people making up stuff. Which,
Wait, hang on a second. Don't lose your train of thought, because that's actually something I'm seeing more and more in modernity. And I don't know exactly where it's coming from, but it's people that are saying, so it's a derivative, or I guess it's an outgrowth of the young earth, old earth debate. But then you've got people that are just like, hey, so God could have made out of chimps the original humanoid Adam and Eve. So we all have the common ancestor. And so this was plan A, and we just allegorized it too much in Genesis to where we don't quite understand. But it wasn't a man and a woman as we see today. It was just part of that
representative of early humans.
Right. And so I don't know if it's an offshoot of, even William Lane Craig, you brought him up. He talks about Genesis as being mytho-history. And then there's the people that are so strict about, no, the Bible just says what it says and it means what it means. It's like, okay, then John 15, is Jesus actually a vine? When Jesus said, is he a door? Does he have a knob that we're supposed to turn to go in? Like, the insert joke here.
God's got giant wings and he likes to wrap us
so
in
it's like, no, there are different figures of speech. There's different types of writing. There's poetry. There's apocalyptic literature. There's history. There's, poetry. I already said that twice. But, you get the idea. And so I feel like that's kind of a growing thing to almost intellectually appease, people that have studied in school, and they're just like, well, that's a way that God could have done it.
Side note, I don't think it's intellectual at all. Like, I'm serious. Like, as someone who studied the history of science and has seen all this evidence put forward, oh, this is it. And it turns out it's not it. Oh, here's the evidence. Turns out it's not.
A theory produced as truth, and then the truth is debunked.
It's there's a paradigm in science of naturalism and an expectation and a need to explain design without an intelligent designer, without God. And so you need evolution to be true. And when you need it to be true, well, you give it billions of years and you give it some tools. It's supposed to explain everything.
When it's more deistic, because it's like, no, okay, yeah. So there was a designer, but he just put all the stuff into the machine, hit on, and then just sat back and crossed his arms.
Or like somehow he's providentially, there's like a sort of a Calvinistic view that you can do. The guy I was studying in the 19th century, Asa Gray, was sort of like Darwinism was Calvinism in nature, and like using all this sin, sex, and death to bring about certain things. I mean, there are intellectually feasible things that you can do, but from a very nuts and bolts evidence point of view, like it is insane that blue whales and butterflies have a common ancestor. Or if you just want to do bats, like a bat and a blue whale have a common ancestor. And this common ancestor is produced by, natural selection acting on chance variation and mutation. All of our labs, all of our studies show that mutation never produces enough genetic information to get that kind of, even if you give it billions upon billions upon billions of years. And then the fossil record is going to be chock full of all these transitions.
Well, it's even simpler than that, because where do you get the building blocks of life? I had a buddy, we were talking about it literally last night, where it's like, okay, let's just take everything else out of the equation. Just explain hydrogen.
Oh, yeah.
Like nitrogen, oxygen. Just explain like those three things.
Just go nothing to something.
Yeah. I mean, that backs it up one more step. So it's like time, space, and matter, a timeless, spaceless, immaterial beginning. I didn't come up with that. Someone else did. But it's just like, okay, so I believe a Middle Eastern Jewish carpenter, was raised from the dead by God. You believe in the most extreme of all possible miracles.
And I think
there's a tremendous inequity there.
And the reason I think that it's not intellectual at all, not even for the Christians who want to be theistic evolutionists, I think it's they just don't want to be laughed at. They don't want to be seen.
They want to be patted on the head.
They don't want to play. They don't want to be put in the you're a creationist box. And that's their God. I know they worship God, but like their little God in their life is being respected. And so they pretend and they can be more uppity over the other Christians too.
Because you listen to a guy deliver basically a live essay. So you have like a Francis Collins who will say things, and if you don't have a scientific background or scientific acumen, like a guy like me,
which sounds really impressive.
Yes, if you read an article or a book by Francis Collins or hear him speak, you're just like, oh wow, it's kind of the same thing. Like everybody's, on the right, everyone's favorite philosopher or modern day philosopher would be like a Jordan Peterson type guy, because he says some stuff that is so fantastical that your brain can barely comprehend it. And you're like, oh, he's kind of on our team. So come here. I need some more of that. And I'm very pro Jordan Peterson, and I wish him the best of health in his recovery right now. I hope he comes back to public life soon, because we need him. But at the same time, like, I think that's what a lot of people are trying to do with someone like Francis Collins. And then when because it was someone from the Discovery Institute, he wrote Stockholm Syndrome Christianity, came on the show recently, but we want to ignore when Francis Collins talks about things like abortion, and we want to ignore.
Oh, and of course
he's horrible.
They get all of that stuff wrong. Like, right. And it's because it's the same thing. Like, hey, look, I don't want to be out of step with the scientific establishment and the reigning paradigm. So I'm an evolutionist, but let me tag Christianity to it.
Right.
I don't want to be out of step with my culture. They're for abortion in these cases. So I don't want to be a step with that, because I don't want to be out of step. Like,
right.
I want to blend in and be respect. I think there's an idol of respected I'm the kind of Christian that is not the kook.
Well, that's where I think third wayers fall in, right? So that's why, recently, like I did an episode about N.T. Wright. He basically came out as pro-abortion. His public comments on it were egregious. They were terrible.
Awful.
They were morally bankrupt. But he's such a respected, theological writer.
Oh yeah, my kids stopped reading his book.
Well, and so that's the thing. Like, there was a list. I can't talk about too much publicly, but there was, I was basically editing a list of resources that we were going to be making for our audience and things like that. And there were a bunch of things by N.T. Wright on there, and I'm like, he could be N.T. right about a lot of these things, but he's so N.T. wrong about abortion that it's just like, we can't do that. It's like that is a poison pill thing for me.
Yeah.
Because we can differ like on Calvinism, Arminianism. We can differ on, pre-mill, post-mill, on-mill, like all that stuff's fine. We can get into secondary and tertiary doctrines and all that, but you don't believe in the sanctity of life in all cases.
Oh, he's siding with the culture of death.
Right. But again, I think you're hitting on it, Russell, to where it's like they want to get, a nice little pat on the head. A lot of pastors are doing the same thing. It's these, I'm not Republican, I'm not, Democrat, I'm middle of the road. And what I always say on the show when I ask these people is, okay, great. So let's take the third way. What is the third way on the issue of transing the children? So you have one side that is like, cut everything off, give them all the hormones. They are what they think they are, but still somehow need to make the physical transition. Then the other side, which is my side, the moral and reasonable side, which is no, this is a mental illness that needs to be cared for and treated, and not by cutting off the healthy breast tissue of a confused little girl.
Wonder what the third way is.
What is the middle position on that? What, we only cut off one boob? You absolute doofus. And so it's just like, it's this moral bankruptcy that these people don't quite understand. And again, that's why it's like, we have to show them, we have to just put up the mirror. We repeat back to them what they said. And then it's like, you have to reckon with this, right? You said it. I'm just repeating it. Is this what you mean? But I don't want to get too far off onto that thing.
It's connected, because the reason that they're going that way is not intellectual. It is spiritual.
It's feelings based.
It is sin. It like really is sinful desire for self-promotion, and it's disobedience, and that God would have his believers doing a certain thing and in a certain way. And they're choosing to go with the multitude to do evil, allow evil, or turn. Because I would say that there are certain philosophical beliefs that are evil, like that they are worshiping the creation instead of the creator. And chief among them is evolutionary naturalism. Of
course.
And of course, you start going down that, which, like an N.T. Wright or something's going to go down, or Francis Collins, and lo and behold, look, they're down that road with abortion too.
Yep.
They're going to be down that road with homosexuality. They're going to be, so there really is like there's a way that you're walking a path that leads to life, and that's rooted in the Word of God, and, guided by the Word of God and understanding it. And then there's a way that's not, and it's guided by the world. Yep. And it really is this simple thing. And just like the apologetical conversations we were talking about, oftentimes it's just sin. And it's not that I'm saying it's not important to know a bunch of stuff. I mean, I know a bunch of stuff. Like I'm not one of these guys that's like, oh, I don't read. No, I'm one of these guys that's like, I've got thousands and thousands of books, and I've had months in my life where I've read 12 books a month for period, over many years, like I'm a reader. But what I've found is that a lot of people's problems are not intellectual. They're not because they've become really convinced of the evidence. It's what they want to do. And they want to do it because it gets them something. And oftentimes it's paltry. I'm not laughed at.
Well, they're stepping over dollars to get dimes is kind of what they're doing. And so, because they want to be able to put kind of a veneer over something. And so again, it's okay. It's the same thing as like you have people that are like adding stuff to the gospel because somehow the gospel isn't sweet enough. And so they have to kind of add to it. And it's addition by subtraction is ultimately what it ends up, or whatever.
They need to do something.
Yeah, they've got to do something, because we can't just present it the way it's presented, because it maybe sounds a little judgy, it's a little bit too abrasive. And then they try to do something, which one of my least favorite words in the English lexicon, nuance it. They try to nuance the gospel, or they try to nuance things. And I was like, okay, well, there are areas of gradation in life for sure. And then there are things that just live in the space of black and white. So you and I can sit here and debate, okay, pre-curve trucker hats are better than flat bill trucker hats, right? So you're a pre-curve guy. I'm a flat bill guy.
So I don't know if I'd debate it with you. I just had the hat that they give me.
But still, we could have our opinions, but do either one of us get to be right? Well, no, because it's in the world of opinion, but that's a hat. That's either a statement of fact or a statement of falsehood.
It's not the life of a human being.
Right. And so going all the way back to the life of the human being thing. So you've got these arguments swirling around in your brain. You've got this alter ego going because you're trying to protect the body of work that you have done, and you weren't convicted to just like basically tip your own apple cart over.
The plan was to finish the PhD.
Right.
Then if I was going to go off and sort of start an abolitionist movement, I would do that as a doctor.
Right.
Right. And that seems like the most sane plan. In a certain sense, that would have been great. Maybe people would be listening to me more if I had doctor. I don't think so. Right. I haven't really had a hard time getting people to listen to me. So, but anyway, I got busted. And I got, you know who Michael Ruse is?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that? What was that old movie with like Ben Stein? It was like exposed as Ben Stein, and he's doing some anti-abortion thing.
No idea.
Oh my gosh. How old are you? Nah, just kidding.
I'm 39. I don't know if is that much older.
Yeah.
Born in 86.
Yeah. 80. But
see, I missed out on all like the 80s action movies too, because I was like 2 and 3 years old.
Oh man, I watched Stranger Things. I'm like, this is my childhood.
Okay.
Know?
All right. Yeah.
But
I was a little before my time.
Yeah. So I'm an old man. But the reason I was saying Michael Ruse, he's one of the sort of leaders of the Darwin industry. Big deal. Many, like big deal. He was, if the people who'd seen that movie with Ben Stein, it was the Discovery Institute's first documentary that they did.
Okay.
And the guy who's like talking about how the early compounds kind of evolved on the back of crystals, and he just looks like a total doof. He's like on the back of crystals.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And it's like, and Ben Stein's like crystal, and so it's like the most sort of iconic part of that movie. That's funny. You haven't seen that movie. I'll send you a link.
We'll have to watch that. Is that a family movie night kind of movie?
I don't know.
Probably not with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Yeah, it's
still working on Lion King. Yeah,
it's a little nerdy, but anyway. So Michael Ruse is in town for like the Darwinian centennial, and here I am. I've become totally enamored with the abolitionist movements of the past, and I'm trying to build an abolitionist movement in the present. I've got about 30 or 40 people at the local church that are sort of meeting every month or, twice a month to sort of dream up ideas of like, if we're going to go to the abortion clinics, how would we engage people? Like, what would we do? Should we go to the high schools? Should we go to the colleges? Like, should we make some flyers? Like, we're just trying to figure stuff out. So I'm living this dual life and putting up these posters and posting all this stuff. The Ian John Philoponus and the Abolish Human Abortion Facebook page are kind of taking off. Our memes are doing well among regular pro-life people. And so I'm trying to keep these lives separate. And also I'm fraternizing with the intelligent design people. I don't know how, but somehow something gets out to the point where Michael Ruse sitting at like a bar, he's at OU to give a lecture. And it's me, Michael Ruse, and my chair of my dissertation. We're sitting there, and Michael Ruse, who I barely know, he's this famous British historian guy. He's like, I hear there's a student moonlighting or secretly infiltrating the program who's an intelligent design advocate and something about abortion or something like that. And I'm just like sitting in the booth. And I'm like,
you didn't just immediately raise your hand?
I had no idea that it was like super well known, but it had be.
How did they even know you were a student?
Well, no, I was there as a student. So I was the TA. No.
How did they know that the Bubbleupicus name or whatever that was?
I don't know. I to this day, I just don't really know. Like somehow it had gotten out. It had been figured out. And I think I should talk to Pierce, now that I'm like, not under he's not my, I don't know, he's just a guy.
Yeah.
I should just ask him, was like, how long did you know? Like, do you know that I was like,
did he know for a while?
Like, I think he knew for a while, but so he had signed my master's thesis. Like, you can go buy his book and I'm in his index.
Okay.
Like he's got, which I think is because like he cites my master's thesis is published in some science education journal. And so he's like referred to it. So as a professor, you have a student and that student gets published. That's good on you. And so I think there's sort of a kind of, I don't want Russell to be this lunatic religious guy. I want him to keep pretending, and I'll keep pretending. We'll all just pretend together.
So we can get to the end of the rainbow.
Yeah.
And everybody gets to be
Because
happy.
we're all just trying to get tenure, right? And so he's sitting there and he's like, and Michael Ruse is like, yeah, like, so somehow Michael Ruse, and he's from Britain. Somehow
so he's wondering aloud in his accent, and you're just frozen.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And it was just so awkward and weird. I think there were some things happening a little before that it kind of like, it was getting hard, because we started putting the AHA symbol, like we would chalk, like it kind of went from just sort
You're
of
like Gideon in the middle of the night. You're like, chalking the sidewalks or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, straight up Gideon. We were like looking for Asherah poles and tearing them down and stuff like that.
Like, I really got it.
So we were doing like, like low level street art.
Vandalism.
Vandalism.
That's right. Let's go.
Yeah, man. Okay. By this time we had, vinyl stickers, and we were putting them on stop signs and stuff.
Campus. Let's go.
We were changing the world.
That's right.
But anyway, it had gotten out. There had been some controversy about, there's a way this comes full circle in a funny way. Maybe we'll get to it, but it had gotten out. It had come around that there was this person, and they somehow knew it was a graduate student in the history of science. And I was like,
the obvious choice.
I was like the scholarship guy. Like, I mean, I was the graduate teaching assistant for the main Darwinian dream course with, Richard Dawkins. So like when Richard Dawkins came, I was the guy giving him a tour of the history of science collections, showing him our copies of the early editions of the Origins of Species and helping him. He couldn't even read. It was really funny. There was like some writing in one of our copies of the like the third edition of the Origin of Species, and he's like reading. He can't read Darwin's writing, but I can read Darwin's writing because that's what I do. Like academically, I see Darwin's writing all the time.
Like his handwriting.
Yeah, it's handwriting.
That's right.
And Dawkins is like trying to read this inscription, and I'm like, and I got this. Yeah.
Excuse me, Richard.
Because Richard Dawkins is like a fake. He doesn't know the history of science stuff side of it. He's just like
Is he as fake as like Bill Nye, who's not actually a science guy? He's an engineer.
Yeah. I think Dawkins is actually at one point in time a scientist, but he's just a propagandist.
Okay.
But anyway, so like I'm in that world. And for me to be Christian, it's okay as long as it's like secret, or it's like,
yeah. Like the other guy that you talked about that was on your like committee or whatever.
Yeah. Like as long as I'm compartmentalizing it. But abolishing abortion to the glory of God is not compartmentalizing your Christianity.
Not quite.
And I'm also like having this paradigm shift in my own brain about like doing what I ought to do to love my neighbors as myself, regardless of whether or not people laugh at me. And I'm like, I think it's like the final thing that God needs to do is like smash this kind of idol of respectable, me. I'd gotten married. My wife, she dreamed of being the professor's wife. We have grad students in the house, and we go to the geeky academic
wearing your tweed jackets,
and smoking pipes and stuff like that. She had that, and I had that, and that wasn't going to work for what I was going to end up doing. And so God had to sort of like, okay, you've got the art, you've worked on that, you've got the philosophy, enough of that, you've done the apologetics, enough of that, you got the history stuff, and then I've got you to see what you need to see about this debate between incrementalism and immediate abolitionism. You've learned about all this kind of stuff. You're ready to go, and you're not even interested in your dissertation anymore. I mean, I was not nominally interested in it, but it's not your passion. And I'm going to blow up your world. And it blew it up, because that little conversation with Michael Ruse, as small as that was, it was at Coach's, a little pub type bar thing in Norman. It became known. Like all the grad students, they all knew, and all the professors all knew. The professor that I had a pretty good relationship with, he always knew. Like he always knew that I was like a Christian that read Francis Schaeffer and stuff like that, because he knew me as an undergrad. But it was just kind of like, all right, we've lost Russell to radical religious stuff. And there were some professors that are like, get him out of here. Good riddance. We don't like that guy. He can just, go. But I think there were some that were kind of like, I think he's like one of our best students. Like, I don't know now, but that's what I felt at the moment. And so I went and I talked to the chair of the department at that time, Stephen Livesey, I guess. And I kind of said, yeah, my heart has gone in this other direction. And I think, he's like a liberal Christian that probably just thought I was just some kind of weird unicorn. Like, I have no idea what to do with this student. He's going to go fight abortion. Like, not normally what people drop out of, I'm fully funded, So I left the program, and I don't even know exactly how God has taken care of us financially or anything, because we were those Christians that were going to wait to have babies until I was done with had my doctorate. I left, and, we just decided to have babies. My wife had been working here in Edmond at OSBI. She was in the forensics stuff lab there. And she had been working, and I had been a student, and we were not having kids. I dropped out of the program. She got pregnant. She stopped working. I wasn't really working. I mean, I was working some like jobs like at the time. I mean, I don't want to go into it on your program, but I was at this time, contradictory as it may seem, I was playing cards.
Yeah.
I was playing Texas Hold'em for money. So I had played Texas Hold'em, and I knew how to make money doing that. And I'd worked as a barista and stuff like this. This is kind of too much detail for your show, but
this is stuff they don't get on YouTube and on the reels on Instagram.
Yeah. You're not getting this.
It's setting the stage though.
Yeah. So it all works together. I mean, I think we put up a short like 2 or 3 days ago where I was like, if we were sitting at a poker table, I'd have all your money.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember.
And I'm sure some people were
because
watching
they were
going,
just so obvious and real smarmy with what they were saying.
Yeah, they were.
Like,
you had the tell, But I was like, man, I wonder how the audience, me making poker, some of our audience probably
not a
like
whole
that.
lot of people would be offended by that in this audience.
Yeah. So I was doing that, and I wasn't going to go back to doing that, for money, because that's like the way I was is a grind. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I just started doing abolitionism stuff, and I started, doing our local abolition society and sort of coming up with, gear for people to wear, signs for people to hold, pamphlets for people to pass out, drop cards, all just the propaganda, good propaganda, propagating abolitionist ideology, having weekly meetings and stuff, and just different people at different times that have had money and believed in it has said, well, you know what? Okay, I'll take care of your car. I'll take care of your, mortgage. And so I began kind of doing this sort of gone from this academic stability, because it really was pretty decently paying thing. And, I had it set up to where I was going to write my dissertation and try to get it published and all that kind of stuff, to not having that stability. My wife, she's pregnant, she's got a kid, and I'm just somehow surviving. Kind of like a weird George Mueller period in my life where we are month to month. We don't exactly know how we're putting gas in the car or food on the table, but it is consistently happening. And I'm consistently just doing abolition stuff. And so, Abolitionist Society of Ohio pops up. Abolitionist Society of, Kansas pops up. And so you start having all these little abolitionist groups. And this is 2011 to 2012. And, they're at our church and everything. It's just something we're doing, and it's thriving, and it's starting to replicate. And people that are interested in it are interested in it, but no one really knows. But all the way back in 2011, I knew that the pro-life establishment, the pro-life paradigm, which I don't know how much we're going to get into that, of it.
We're on your timetable here.
Yeah, man. All of it was going to be paradigmatically different, ideologically speaking. What I was going to be doing was attempting to replace what what I believed were unbiblical approaches, strategies, arguments, just a framework in the pro-life world with a more biblical framework. And that would change everything from, rhetoric to tactics to legislation and all of it. And in 2012, or 2011, sitting down, working out like the biblical ideology of abolitionism, like what are the tenets, like what are the unshakable principles upon which we would do this. And I'm just like giving like little talks, putting up little Facebook video rants, and I start seeing it resonate with people all over. So you start seeing enough abolitionists in enough places where you're like, hey, yeah, maybe we can do this. Maybe we can make a gear store and we can kind of sell things to people. So they have, a lot of the pro-life stuff was dorky looking, the pinks and the blues and the baby feet and all that, which, there's a place for that, but it wasn't cool stuff like you're lying here. So I was like, all right, I'm going to work on this material. I'm going to propagate these ideas. As these groups pop up, I'm going to try to, without having a strong organizational top-down structure, I'm going to try to ideologically unify us all in tenets and a symbol. We can all share the symbol. We can share the ideas. We'll root them in the Word of God, and we'll connect them to those earlier abolitionist movements. And we'll build this thing with like one big goal of abolishing abortion. But I know this might be shocking to some of your viewers. I don't think you can abolish abortion unless you replace the pro-life movement.
Hey guys, real quick. I know a lot of you train for very specific things. So maybe you've got a mud race coming up, a mountain hunt, a 5K, or maybe you just want to keep up with your kids, or you just don't want to let the old man in. But for a lot of you guys, whether you're working out at the Globo gym or even in your garage gym, you get there and you just don't know exactly what to do. And so you just kind of settle for the same old workout routine, maybe some bench press, bicep curls, a walk on the treadmill, and you're not really getting the most out of your workout plan. And I want you guys to stop wasting time at the gym. No more settling. It's time for you guys to get a guide to help you reach your fitness goals. And that's why I want to remind you about my good friends at Mountain Tough. Mountain Tough is a fitness and mental toughness app developed by military special operators and mountain hunters that's becoming a global movement for building mentally tough athletes on and off the mountain. Mountain Tough is a native app ready to be downloaded on all platforms, so that includes iPhone, Android, Apple TV, Roku, and there's more. Once you sign up and download the app or access the website, you immediately have access to hundreds of exercise programs and literally thousands of workout videos, thousands. So that includes structured hybrid strength and endurance programs, daily workouts, the full exercise library, mental toughness training, the Mountain Tough community, and accountability. And you can use it all on the go, online or offline, no matter where you decide to train. So if you're just getting started, that's great. They have programs for beginners. If you have minimal or no gear where you train, that's not a factor. They have minimal gear and body weight programs. And guys, if you're wanting to get into or maintain elite level fitness, they've got you covered with programs for top tier athletes too. And for a limited time, Mountain Tough is extending Undaunted Lifers like you an incredible offer. Go to mountaintough.com. That's MTNtough.com and enter the code Kyle when you sign up for a monthly plan to receive your first month free after your 14-day trial. So that's 6 weeks free to make sure this is for you. I'm sure it will be. That is 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app in the world. So stop wasting time. It's time to get real fitness results. Let my friends at Mountain Tough guide the way. Again, go to MTN Tough. That's mountaintough.com, promo code Kyle. So pause for a second.
Yep.
So we need to define our terms just a little bit.
Yep.
So what is the pro-life movement?
So, and I'll connect it to the story here. The pro-life movement. So break up. So abortion, it happens. It's bad. Okay. Why is it bad? Because it's murder. Okay. It's murder. How do we treat murder? Biblically, murder of children. How do we treat child sacrifice? The Bible says in Leviticus chapter 20 that if people in your culture are sacrificing their children, God will turn his face against them. If they're sacrificing their children and you do not punish them, God will turn his face against you. And you have to punish them equally because of what's in Exodus 21 about, like a preborn child loses its life your life is forfeit whenever the two men are fighting.
Yep.
So I'm like, all right. So Genesis 9:6, just penalty for murder is death. Child sacrifice must be punished equally, like as murder. So the laws against murder ought to be applied equally to preborn human beings, because preborn human beings are image bearers. And if you're not criminalizing abortion, punishing it, you don't just have a problem in your culture, like you have a God problem, because God's against you. So if you look at Leviticus 20, that's what it says. Like God will turn his face against you. And that's consistent in all the prophets. Like, so Isaiah 1 and Amos 5, the whole thing, like put away your musical instruments and let justice roll down. I want justice in Amos 5. In Isaiah 1, it's, you have solemn assemblies, you pray, you have all these religious things, you're doing all this stuff, but you're not establishing justice for the fatherless. I don't listen to your prayers. Your hands are full of blood. So it's like with God, if you have the shedding of innocent blood and you turn a blind eye to it, make light of it, or compromise with it in any way, he is against you. And so that's just crystal clear in Scripture. So I'm thinking, along with what I learned from the abolitionists of slavery, that God was against them for what they were doing. That whenever they had written so Moses had said, if a slave runs away into your keeping, you do not return them to their master, you help them. But the United States Constitution said, if a slave runs away into your keeping, you must return them to their master. So this is diametrically opposed to the law of God. Even though there's a form of biblical slavery, man-stealing slavery is not it. And so they were like, it's a crime, it must be punished. And I'm like, abortion is crime, it must be punished. If we don't execute the punishment against murder of preborn children, the hearts of the children of men will run to do evil. Ecclesiastes 8:11. And so I've got this whole biblical thing going on, studying it. And I take that and understanding how murder is supposed to be treated, and I look at the pro-life movement, I see a almost 100% group commitment to abortion is bad for women and children. The women who get abortions are victims of abortion. They don't know what they're doing. And when we pass the laws, we need to have immunity clause for them. They will not get in trouble. And I'm like, okay, what's the pro-choice movement saying? You look at the pro-choice movement and they're like shouting their abortions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, they know what they're doing. And we're not the first culture in history to practice, child sacrifice. We are just like all cultures that have been in rebellion against God, practicing child sacrifice. Ours is just modern, scientific, technologically advanced child sacrifice. And we practice it for the same exact reasons, and the way that it should be treated is the same exact way. And I'm looking at the pro-life movement and I'm like, okay, you take their laws. Okay, you look at their laws. We're gonna stop abortion at the ability to feel pain. All right, this looks a lot like anti-slavery laws that were like regulating what you couldn't do with a slave. It's not abolishing chattel slavery. It's just saying you can't, take off their toes when they run away or something like that. If you're going to whip them, you can only whip them a certain amount of time. Okay. It's like a sort of certain thing. Or we're going to protect, we're going to, before you get an abortion, you have to have your parents' permission, or you have to look at a sonogram, like these educational type things. Okay. That's very similar to, if you're going to practice transatlantic slavery, you've got to have a certain amount of space for each slave. And I'm seeing all of these analogous type things, all of that stuff, all of those regulatory ideas in the abolitionist movements. At the end of them, guys like William Wilberforce had said, at the end of this 20-year campaign, it turned out that the principal stays, the people that were keeping the slave trade from being abolished, were not.
They were the moderate abolitionists.
The moderate abolitionists, the so-called gradual abolitionists. He said they regulated it, They didn't agree with us that God was going to judge us for it. They always came up. Wilberforce would put forward a law to abolish the slave trade, and someone would be like, well, why don't we just give them more space? And they would vote for the more space for slaves, less of them may die, we're saving some type legislation instead of the abolition. And it was always a substitute. And so that's all I'm seeing from the pro-life movement. When you're talking about their legislation, their campaigns, their rhetoric, abortion stops a beating heart. When I looked at the apologetics, the way that the arguments were being made.
If you can get around the beating heart thing, then the entire thing falls apart.
Yeah, well, I mean, like SLED, like the whole SLED thing from like Scott Klusendorf and those guys, like size, level of development, environment, whatever. Like you can make these secular arguments to meet the person in the middle to get them to agree, but that whole SLED argument applies to pigs or dolphins or anything. Life begins at conception for all animals. It's got to be the image of God. And ultimately, we're trying to defend a human embryo at the moment of conception, a human zygote. They don't have beating hearts. They don't have fingerprints. They don't have cute little baby bodies. They look like little, and I'm like, you guys do not have the philosophical goods, and you're not even trying. You need to root this in the incarnation of Christ. We know that the second person of the Trinity was the creator of the cosmos, who emptied himself and entered the womb of a young unmarried woman who wasn't planning to be with child and became the size of a single cell. And that like Jesus didn't stop existing as a person whenever he entered that womb. And so you've got right there, that human embryo is, that's all you need, like theologically. And we know because you have his development, you have, when he's an embryo, John the Baptist is a fetus and he's leaping in the womb, and there's just all this language about how long he's in there, that he's conceived, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you've got all this like strength. Why don't you use it? And then I'm looking at the pro-life movement. The reason they don't use this theological stuff is because they believe that you have to reach people that aren't theological if you're going to abolish abortion. You need the non-believers too. That's what they believe. And a lot of people may believe that. And maybe you believe that somewhat.
Well, let me actually try to steel man their side.
Yep.
Just a little bit.
Yep.
Because whenever you look at, so I was talking about this with Mark Wayne Mullen, who's our senator, and we weren't talking about this. We were talking about some other topic on one of our shows.
Yep.
And he goes, it's very easy as a and he wasn't, taking a shot at me, but he's like, it's very easy as a podcaster or someone on Twitter or someone that's got a blog to be an ideological purist on insert topic.
Yep.
Then there's the reality of the legislative body to get something passed into law. And as we're recording this right now, it looks like the government shutdown is going to end any day. And there's all the things, and there's, okay, are we going to get rid of the filibuster? Okay, thank God we're not doing that. And then, you need 60 votes, and okay, but in the House, you need this many. Okay, you got the majority. There's the reality of the legislative body, and that's not just reflective of the United States Congress. It's reflective of state congresses and local municipalities, all the things, right? And so what I've told people before, because I've brought up some abolitionist ideas, is I'm like, okay, if the two options are what we can get done and what we can't get done,
people always
I'll take the what we can get done right now for the exact same reason of earlier, is because 100% image bearers of God will be spared from, trash bins.
Well, I'll get to.
Let's go for it.
I would be there.
That's just what I've said before, so I would hate to not bring that into the conversation.
Yeah. No, so I'd be with you there were it not for the reality of God. So I'm there in a lot of other areas, but when you have, which I don't know if I need to go back a little bit to get to here, but when you have God telling you, if it's child sacrifice, if you know
the specificity of the crime,
if you know they're killing children and you do not punish them, I will punish you. Like you have that. You have in Isaiah 10, 1-2, like, woe to those who make iniquitous decree that make fatherless children pray. Whenever so what is a fatherless child? Well, think about a rape conceived child. There's no one more fatherless than a rape conceived child. All right, so you write a law, it's to save some babies, but in that law, it doesn't say, it says, except for in the case of rape. Well, you had to, the only way you could pass it to get some was to put this in there. And so you put that in there to save some. In putting that in there, you made God, the author of the universe, your enemy, right? So now you've got woe to you for your iniquitous decree that made the fatherless child prey. Often over and over in scripture, it's kind of like, you know what? I don't really like this impulse to like save the many. I like this impulse to save the least. Like whatever you did not do for the least of these, you did not do for me. The most disregarded person is going to be the person you're caring for and all that kind of stuff. And that's the sort of rubric or measurement that God's, put on this one in particular. There may be places where you can do sort of get the best that you can. But the problem is whenever he said, if you don't punish them, then I will turn my face against you. This thing that's apparently getting some is bringing the judgment of God. And so if you do this and only this, your borders will be open. You might save some babies. You might think you're saving babies. Evidentially, we can show you're not. Like Oklahoma, we're in Oklahoma. We've had since 2016, people calling for abolition. And in we've had a bill to abolish abortion as murder filed in the Oklahoma Senate. Abortion is murder, it should be abolished. From 2016 to this present day, we've had majorities of Republican Christian pro-lifers.
Super majorities, yeah.
Super majorities in the House, in the Senate, and in the governor's office. Abolish abortion or look at an ultrasound first. This gets ignored or tabled or voted down, and we pass this. Every time we pass the one to get some, our abortion numbers have gone up. Like you can literally look at it. Past the increment, abortion numbers go up. You can look at it all the way down to date. There are more abortions in Oklahoma today than there were before Roe v. Wade. It's just because it's all pills. Like you could go sit in Governor Stitt's office and pop an abortion pill and bring the baby back and present the child to him in a pool of blood and say, I did this, and cite in the Oklahoma statute that no mother can be held criminally responsible if she's electing the abortion. This is so diametric. That's acquitting the guilty, which is an abomination to God, to kill a fatherless child, the least of these that is being knit together in her womb, under the cover of unjust laws. And that statute was written by a Christian pro-life conservative politician who was addicted to incremental victories. And so you can do this for all 50 states. You can do this for multiple nations. You can show that what we've done is we've made a plan to get some instead of all. And we've kind of argued against the abolitionist position as if it's some kind of a moral purity, ideological, pipe dream thing. When that's not I know there's probably some people out there that are doing it for that reason, but that's not what I'm doing. Like, I think we are in an actual logical problem that we face. Like, we keep doing the things that God himself tells us not to do. And it's to our shame. So like in Oklahoma, where we could do it, we don't do it. We do the get the little instead, get the some instead, because we're addicted to the increments. And we believe in the increments because we can't stand on like the word of God or belief in God. It's like, if you look at sort of, the Bible always, the Bible's chock full of examples of sort of immediatism and incrementalism. You look at Moses and Pharaoh, like Moses goes to Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh's like, what if I let you go for a little bit and come back? Some, give you some, then you can come back for more later or something. Moses is just like, no, let my people go. We're leaving. The nation of Israel's leaving. And Pharaoh's like, get out of my sight. You had to have the same quota on bricks, but I'm taking your straw. And the people grumble to Moses and they're like, man, Moses, you made it harder for us. Why didn't you just take the deal or whatever? Don't go back in and say that. Moses goes back in. He consistently does what God tells him to do, believing that God's going to do something to help him. Pharaoh consistently puts forward increments. Well, like, you and your women can go, but the children have to stay. And that's an increment. No, we're not doing that. Okay, more plagues. You and your women and your children can go, but not your animals. Your animals have to stay. And Moses is like, not a hoof will remain in Egypt. It's this like radical belief in doing what God says and then God showing up. And so what I think about all this pro-life stuff, all of these little causes, all these little victories, they are the reason we've had 70 million aborted babies. Because our problem, and it kind of connects to something earlier, long earlier we talked about, our problem is not with the left and the liberals. They're not powerful enough to defeat God. Like, we don't even need to convert any of them. If we, like in Oklahoma, let's take it, Oklahoma, we have the votes, we have the power, we have the government, we have it all. The only reason abortion is legal in Oklahoma is because of the Republican pro-life supermajorities.
And so going back to your point that you made a little bit ago, okay, in order for this to be a real possibility, you have to get rid of the pro-life establishment, if you will, that is currently,
because they're doing the substitute. So
Okay.
they're like the controlled opposition.
So I guess two parts. So how do you go about, I mean, because we're talking about defunding, dismantling, whatever word you want to use.
Yep.
How do we go about replacing the current, the current pro-life movement?
Yeah.
But then also how, even if you were able to do that, how does that translate into winning?
So, all right. So let me put with this.
Yeah.
We live in a culture, you said this earlier, we've all seen an ultrasound, right? If you want the baby, you put the ultrasound on your refrigerator and you name them, and if you don't want the baby, they're a clump of cells and you kill them.
Well, in the ultrasound thing, it's like, okay, Planned Parenthood people know how to not do it correctly to where you can't see the heartbeat. There's ways around it all.
But I just think that our culture is scientifically literate enough that we know where babies come from. We know they're human beings. We know that if you abort
we know
them,
they're not human soup, and then all of a sudden in 9 months, they become a baby right before they come out.
They don't pop out of the magical vagina tube or whatever. Sorry for that. But, it just doesn't.
There's been worse that has been said at this table, so I think you're okay.
Yeah, we're good. But like the culture knows, everyone, it's just like we're allowing people to be just delusional idiots. And that's what you see on our content all day long, just saying stuff that just contradicts everything. And so we've got this situation. How do we get rid of this? I think, sorry, this isn't made of tinfoil, but I think to powers and principalities and high places strategizing to keep us dehumanizing and destroying preborn children, I think it's satanic. I think it's like a actual somehow connected to the demonic realm, stuff above my pay grade. But I think we need people to be sacrificing their children, murdering image bearers in the place of the incarnation every minute of every day. And we need it to be covered in the law so that the nation is not blessed by God. And that's what's going on. How do we get out of that? Well, when you can see the life, you have a culture that believes in human rights and loving your neighbor and social justice. How in the world do you keep something like ripping little innocent babies to pieces from being abolished? Controlled opposition. You have to create something that's against that, but isn't abolishing it. So go with some Venn diagrams, and I'll get to the practical stuff here in a second. The pro-choice movement for abortion, the pro-life movement against abortion, the abolitionist movement against abortion. Most people would say, oh, look, the abolitionist movement and the pro-life movement they're both against abortion. That's their little Venn diagram center. And they're separate from the pro-choice movement. It's actually not that. The pro-life movement and the pro-choice movement are 100% in agreement that abortion should not be criminalized. So they're right there. They're together. And the abolitionist movement says it should be criminalized. So in a state like Oklahoma, when you put forward a bill to abolish abortion, pro-lifers and pro-choicers both vote against it. And so abortion is not abolished. The pro-lifers explain they have to vote against it because it's too harsh, because it criminalizes it. Mothers would be facing penalties if we pass this bill. So the pro-lifers, and whenever that we had the bill before them, you had Planned Parenthood people and Oklahomans for Life people sitting on the same dang row watching it get killed together, lobbying their legislators to, like Kristen Hawkins is writing letters, do not support this bill. The pro-life movement in Louisiana, whenever they put forward a bill to abolish abortion, it got out of committee and it was going to the floor, 72 leading pro-life organizations wrote an open letter saying, we do not and will not ever support any bill that has criminal sanctions on women who murder their babies via abortion. So the pro-life movement is not just me with a tinfoil hat, is evidentially based killing abolition bills. So the only way you're going to be able to pass, like whatever you need, the 25 senators and the 51 House reps and the governor, that's how many abolitionists you need to do it in Oklahoma. So you have to destroy the pro-life movement in order to get practically those votes for abolition. If we're just looking at legislatively. Well, the only way to destroy that is to destroy those ideas in the culture. So a pro-life politician running against an abolitionist politician, the abolitionist politician has to win. The only way the abolitionist politician can win is if you've already reached the people with the ideas that they're going to be voting on. So that's happened now twice in Oklahoma. We've had abolitionist legislators unseat pro-life legislators and run on abolitionist campaigns. Senator Dusty Devers and Senator Warren Hamilton. Senator Jake, I forget his name. He's running for governor now. Also was an abolitionist in there, but he didn't run for re-election. So practically, you have to change the ideas at the bottom. Whenever I was involved in this, to go back a little bit, whenever I kind of dropped out, did the abolitionist movement early on, it was a lot of college campuses, high schools, streets, abortion mills. It was a lot of that, engaging online, cultural stuff. By 2016, it had made inroads into the legislature, and Senator Joseph Silk, who was a newly elected senator from the Broken Bow area here in Oklahoma. He was sitting in there, freshman legislator, had a heartbeat bill. Babies should be protected after they have a beating heart. You could look at that as saving some, or you could look at it through a biblical lens and say, God hates it. It's hard to do that because people think, no, it's going to save some babies. But can it save babies if God's not behind it? In other areas, we know you got to, like, one man with God as a majority. We may be getting the masses to agree that a beating heart is really important, but a majority without God is a minority or a tragedy, right? Silk, we meet with him, we talk with him about abolition, and we're like, so do you believe abortion is murder? Yeah. Life begins at conception? Yeah. Then why does your bill deny that? Like, do we really think that we're going to fight abortion by literally writing into laws things that are not true? Like, oh yeah, this isn't true. Like, I believe the purpose of government is to punish murderers. It's like, I believe, Genesis 9:6, we're supposed to punish murderers. That's the purpose of government, small government. But when I write my pro-life bill, I deny that. I believe that all people are equal and life begins at conception. But when I write my pro-life bill, I act as though life begins at the ability to feel pain, or I act as though life begins at at a certain trimester or a certain stage of development. Why? To save some. Okay. What does God think about when you do that? And there's your problem. The Bible says he hates it and that he'll oppose it. And so for 5 decades, we've had hundreds and hundreds of bills backed by millions and millions of people and billions of dollars. And we haven't been able to abolish something that is ripping the arms and legs off of little human beings and crushing their skulls. It's because we've been doing something that's substitute that God opposes. So, I don't hold this position because I want to discover some niche thing. like, ooh, I can be special and different. Like, I really believe it. Like, I truly believe
Well, it's much easier things to defend.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, practically speaking, if you're just trying to build a YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah. If I'm just trying to build a YouTube channel and I can explain behind the curtain here, the reason I do the YouTube thing is if I can go, because we went real legislatively and we found it was very difficult to, these guys, they want the pro-life A+ so they can continue to run and continue to be in office. They don't care what an abolitionist is telling them that their bill or their vote is contrary to the will of God. I don't freaking care.
Yeah.
Like, as long as I'm getting reelected and I need the support of the pro-lifers. The pro-lifers are telling me that if I support abolition, they won't support me, which is an active thing that goes on. People need to know that. The pro-life establishment, all of the big groups, all the way down to the small groups, will work together to actually punish legislators who vote for abolition bills and try to replace them with pro-lifers. And so I'm like, golly, we're running up against a really difficult situation over here in the legislative realm. More work needs to be done in the culture. I can't get normal Christians to listen to all this kind of stuff about, like, what does the word of, should we do what the word of God says? Is it best? I can't beat pragmatism. I can't beat all this kind of stuff. I can't even get a seat at the table. I can't, they're not reading my books or whatever. So how do I get them to listen to me? Why don't I go do the culture stuff? And why don't I go do the street stuff? Do it better, or try to do it better than the pro-lifers, because the way that there will be consistency in the legislative language, there'll be consistency in the street engagement. So whenever I engage on the street, I don't shy away from it being murder and the consequences of murder. I don't shy away from the fact that I'm a Christian, that I think that the image of God is like I'll even tell people, I was like, listen, if there's no image of God, I can understand why a human embryo wouldn't be defended, because I'm like, I'm going to stand on the truth, plainly state the truth. I'm not going to practice any underhanded, cunning ways. I'm just going to boldly, plainly state it, and then let the truth of God, be active. And in the knowledge that there is a God in the heavens who is watching, who is part of all these conversations, and doesn't need any one of us. Like, everyone says that. Well, what does it look like to actually believe it? So we don't need to try to persuade all the ACLU, Planned Parenthood people, or like come up with common ground with people to where maybe we can pass some small bill and then pass something else and pass something else, like a strategic plan. Like, we literally can figure out what God would have us do, call on that and only that. And so you say, well, it still sounds like a pipe dream. The only reason it sounds like a pipe dream is because there's a pro-life movement. If all the pro-lifers became abolitionists, it'd be over by the end of the week.
And so you've kind of moved focus from legislative side to engaging with the culture side, which has led to, so if people aren't familiar, Abolitionists Rising on Instagram. What's the YouTube channel?
Abolitionists Rising. Okay. So it's just Abolitionists Rising, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram,
got it.
All that kind
so
of stuff.
So it's consistent everywhere. There's no random underscores or USA or whatever because you had to do it.
Yeah.
And so you're doing these man on the street things. And so what people might expect is, portable speaker, microphone, loudspeaker, castigating the culture as people walk by, blah, 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 doing that stuff, which there seemingly is some value in that. And then there are some arguments against it. People have seen the picketing and the signage outside of Planned Parenthoods and things like that. I remember being a student at the University of Central Oklahoma where you were recently. So this would have been my sophomore year. I mean, we're talking 2005, 2006. There was a big display outside the communication building, which is right by
Genocide Awareness Project or whatever.
Yeah, and it's, right by my dorm. And, it's just these 20-foot tall pictures of dead babies. And okay, here's a dime, and then here's dead baby parts and all that. Mm-hmm. And then there's, they've got like a little fence around them or whatever for
I've seen it.
Yeah, obvious reasons. And then, so they're trying to engage people around the edges. Didn't seem to be a whole lot of argumentation going on. It was more like, here's our pamphlet. And if you don't agree with everything in this pamphlet, you're wrong. And look at that dead baby. Perhaps there's some value to that. And people have been, been touched in that way. I'm sure God, God's drawing
some people
straight
definitely.
lines with crooked sticks, right?
Yep.
But the way you're going about it is from the outside looking in terms of your process is you've got these kind of poster boards that are, about 3-4 foot tall.
Yeah.
And you've got different sayings, you've got different imagery on there, some of which can easily be shown on Meta or in other places, some that has to be blurred out. But anyway, it's abolitionist messaging, it's abortion is murder messaging, it's, comparing a unborn fetus to a African slave, or it's those types of things.
Yep.
And from my perspective, it's meant to grab someone's attention as they're walking by, to get them to come up to say something where you can start the dyadic communication and engage with them, get their opinion. What is it that you think of my sign? What do you think I'm communicating? Okay, well, on that subject, what would you say your opinion is? Whatever that thing is. And then obviously it leads to a lot of these viral moments. Again, two people getting together and agreeing the entire time, not super viral. People really don't want to see that.
Occasionally.
But then you've got this other side that's kind of on the more right side, the right side of the thing. It's everyone wants to see someone dunk on a leftist, right?
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro dunks on this woke, purple-headed, nose-ringed weirdo.
Own the libs.
Right, own the libs. And there's that side. And believe me, there's some fun in that.
It's got a place.
It loses its utility fairly fast, but there is some fun in watching that happen. And so that's how you're deciding to engage the culture. And so I guess, when did you, come up with the parameters of, okay, this is exactly how we're going to do it? And then I want to start talking about some individual interactions.
Yeah. So to connect where we were, deciding to go do that was also something you just should do. Like, oh, hey, we're trying to do all this really hefty ideological stuff, but we should also try to save some kids, like try to help some people not become murderers and help some people, not kill their children. And so let's go figure out how to engage. Well, especially whenever they shut down like the abortion mills in Oklahoma. So they shut down all the freestanding child sacrifice centers, but all of the pills come, you just get online and order abortion pills. So all the abortions are happening in people's dorm rooms or bedrooms, bathrooms, all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, we've got a problem. There's no longer an abortion clinic to go to. The whole culture's the abortion clinic. Oh, lo and behold, the whole culture has. If you're going to reason with people to try to save these lives, try to rescue those being taken away to death, you kind of have to go do it everywhere you can. And what better place than like a college campus? So we just decided, let's just go do that. A buddy of mine, Sam Riley, works for Abolitionists Rising. He was like, hey, we should mic up and film it. Let's just mic up, film it, maybe get some content. And my first thought was like,
no way.
Who would watch that?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm in my 40s. Like I got like dad vibes.
I'm talking to teenagers.
And I'm like a guy holding a sign. Like I think the guy who holds a sign is kind of like, generally speaking, he's like the lunatic character. He's like the end is near character. The only reason I hold a sign is because I'm like, how do I like start a conversation or whatever? Put something on the sign, gets a conversation going. There's a place for just exposing unfruitful deeds of darkness, like Ephesians 5:11, just like exposing evil. But, we try to put provocative, date rapists, love abortion is like a sign I'll use. People come up and they're like, what the heck? Women are not sex objects. Babies are not body parts. And then people come up and they're confused what I'm saying. And I talk to them. But anyway, so I go out to a Norman, it's like an art walk night. It's like a Friday night art walk type thing. And got some young people with me, and we mic up, set up the signs, talk and film it all. And then we're out there for 2 or 3 hours, and then just come home, and Sam's loading up the audio and syncing it to the video, and he's like watching it, and he messaged sort of this thread I'm in. He's like, man, this stuff's kind of funny. This is pretty hilarious to watch, like these people crashing out and throwing all this stuff at you, and you're just kind of like reasoning with them. I think people would watch this. I'm like, maybe. I mean, I've had YouTube stuff before. It doesn't seem to really do all that well. Because the abolitionist movement was like spreading like leaven, like really slowly in, just conferences and stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure, man, put it up or whatever. So he takes a couple of the conversations, pulls out shorts, puts them up first on TikTok. And like a couple of them go up in like, 8-9 million views on TikTok. And it's just like blowing up. And I'm like,
and what year would this have been starting?
Oh man, that's like 20, what would that be? 2022?
Okay.
Yeah, 2022. And it's like, it's just, I'm like, what, how is this TikTok? Because I wasn't even on TikTok. And I'm like, well, I guess I got to download TikTok now and like, get the dopamine hits from these likes and shares and comments and talk to people. And they're getting just thousands and thousands of comments. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we are like reaching people with this. Yeah, and we were doing activism some, but just kind of like, just because we were Christian evangelists, but we weren't doing it very much. It kind of like had fallen off, and we knew that we needed to do more. And that's why we went that time, the first time. But we were like, oh, we need to do this more and more regularly. And when you're looking at a video and it's got millions of views, and then we were putting up sort of longer form content on YouTube and you're getting 10, 15,000 views, you're just like, okay, I don't gather a crowd, but that's a crowd. That's a lot of people. And to connect it to the heavier stuff, I'm like, okay, here's how we're going to reach a lot of Christian people with the ideas that we think are important, abolitionism, by doing this, like doing the debating with the pro-aborts and debating it better and from an abolitionist perspective. And that's what's happened. Like pro-lifers watch it and they're like, I'm down with this. I'm down with this. And they may or may not notice that there are slight deviations. Like I never, say I'm pro-life and like, oh, that's odd. He doesn't say he's pro-life. What's abolitionism? Type it in. Oh, there's like a whole page, like a whole web world of defining abolitionism. They might end up watching some of my lectures and stuff. So it's like this street work is a sort of a gateway drug to the other stuff. But what I've really seen, because we started on TikTok, then started putting them on Instagram and YouTube and everywhere else where it's kind of, gone pretty, I think we do 30 million views a month. And so, like on YouTube. And so it's like, okay, we are reaching a substantial number of people. And I read a lot of the comments, even if I don't comment a lot, like I read a lot of the comments and I see comment after comment where people are just saying things like, you've moved me from, pro-choice to pro-life to abolition, or you've moved me from like not a Christian to a Christian. And I'm like, why are these people like becoming Christians? And I kind of talked to them a little bit and it's like, no, they were living a life. There was this thing going on and they were just kind of blind to it. Somehow seeing someone stand up against it and fight it as if it is what it is, and from a worldview, and not be worried and scared about how they would look and stuff, has made a lot of people think, what's going on with my Christianity? A lot of like what I was doing when I was looking at the abolitionists of slavery is now being replicated with people watching the YouTube channel. Like, I mean, we're talking like, it's a regular thing for someone to be like, I was an atheist, but I was like a pro-life atheist, and I was comfortable being a pro-life atheist. But I kind of dug deep into this stuff, and I realized my atheism is at war with my pro-lifism stuff. And my pro-lifism stuff doesn't really have the goods either to get rid of this. And just slowly but surely, like I found myself coming into contact with the living God, and I've repented of my sins and like become a Christian. And I'm just like, so just fruit upon fruit. And I'm not like saying, we're not like on a podcast, let me exaggerate it. It's a real thing. And it blows my mind. I screenshot them and I put them in a folder on my computer, but we're talking tons of people. And I'm like, okay, so here's what God's doing through these like YouTube shorts. We do longer content, but the shorts, those we put up 1 or 2 shorts a day whenever we're all at work. God is like, yes, we're trying to abolish abortion, but I think he's building that movement to abolish abortion. And at the same time, causing a lot of people to see themselves as lost. And also a lot of people who are Christians see themselves as unsanctified or unengaged.
When it seems to be coinciding with people, there's kind of like a cultural crap or get off the pot moment, because I'm getting asked a lot of questions now about, are we seeing a movement of God that's unprecedented, which I think that shows some historical ignorance. But they're like, hey, is there a revival happening now? Because, when the Asbury thing was happening, a year or two ago, I remember being like, for whatever reason, this feels like an artificially long worship service.
Just a big party.
And, they try... If there's an actual move of God happening at Asbury, it doesn't get shut down because there aren't enough hotel rooms within city limits, right? You're going to have people that are just going to be sleeping on the ground outside if a movement of God's happening. And you certainly don't have to move it off site and offer people Chick-fil-A sandwiches to keep the service going. So it was just kind of strange. But then
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, they had to move it off site so that they could logistically deal with it a little bit better. I was like, bro, this isn't a revival.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that people weren't getting saved. It doesn't mean that people weren't radically having an encounter with the living God. It doesn't mean any of that. It's just like, okay,
yeah.
If you have to strictly take a definition of revival and it's got these check boxes, it just didn't check the boxes. Okay.
Yeah.
But then I get asked about what's happening now. And one thing that I've been saying is like this year, we're recording this in 2025. There's been a lot of very, very important Christian leaders that have been taken off the chessboard. So you had my friend, Phil Robertson. You have Dr. James Dobson of Focus on the Family.
Mm-hmm.
You have John MacArthur, right?
Yep.
You've got Charlie Kirk. You've got Vodi Bakum. And you're just like, what is happening? And I remember just messaging with some guys, especially right after Vodi died, because he was the fifth out of that group to die. And I'm like, it seems like God's getting us ready for something. Because when you have someone that, let's take MacArthur. When you have someone that has the gravitational pull of a John MacArthur, especially if you're a Calvinist or especially if you're Reformed or whatever, you're not going to learn how to make the argument yourself because you're just going to send somebody the sermon where John MacArthur like talks about it, or you're going to send them a copy of the book where John MacArthur talks about it.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it yourself because you got the big guy. And now in the digital age, even though those guys are dead, they're not dead because they're living on and people are listening to them and reading them.
It's like I'm still getting Charlie Kirk stuff every time I open it.
Exactly. And it's like, how long has Aquinas been dead? And then people are reading him and getting value out of it. Toes are the same. So that's where we go. But you see these converging, all these things converging at the same time. So with the election of Trump, and I've said before that the people the most responsible for Trump being reelected, number 1 is Trump, number 2 is Biden, number 3 is Kamala Harris, number 4 is probably Charlie Kirk, number 5 is probably the guy that took a shot at Donald Trump, right?
Yeah.
Those are the people that are the most important to this movement. Yeah. But then you have Charlie Kirk going on these college campuses and disabusing these children. They're adults, but they're, mentally children because they've extended adolescence into their college years.
Right.
He's disabusing them of notions, and he's doing it with a smile on his face, with scripture on his lips, and the gospel central to everything, especially in the last 2-3 years of his public work.
Increasing that,
right? Yeah. Then you see the explosion of Bible sales. You see, especially young Gen Z males flocking back to churches, reading their Bibles. That's also coinciding with Gen Z females being the most liberal and least family focused that any group of people that's ever been surveyed in America has ever been. And there's all these things that are kind of converging at once. So it makes sense that y'all's content is taking off in this space. And so if God is ordaining it and putting his hands on it, I think that that's a very special thing. So with all that in mind, I want to get from you, what are some of the trends that you've seen? And I want to get back to the Charlie Kirk stuff and doing stuff on campus, obviously.
Yeah.
But 2022, 23, 24, 25, going into 26, even in a short period of time, because that's an entire life cycle of a college student, an undergraduate, right? That's how long you've been doing this. What are the trends that you're seeing with some of your interactions? Because most of these interactions have some very cornerstone things in common.
Same things you said, but they're
right. And it's just coming out of a different face hole with a little bit more or less makeup. And so, but what are the trends in the interactions like? And it's not just that you've gotten better at it over time, because obviously you've gotten more exposure to it. Your arguments are going to get sharper and all that. But let's talk trends.
So, one thing, it's a simplified version of what you said, but it relates. I think the left got so insane with all
super high on their own part,
super clown world stuff. Just dumb stuff that just is so far away.
They pulled the rubber band so far.
Yeah.
They weren't worried about the snapback.
And I think even people who are left are looking at them going like, what is this lunacy?
When you have Bill Maher looking at people while he's smoking a joint and going, what is wrong with the Democrats? Like, we've gotten into a bizarre world.
And so I would look at, the first Trump thing, right? The Trump Hillary, that whole election, and just sort of exacerbating the culture war. And, he was so he was so straightforward. So even if you didn't like him on a lot of things,
you liked that.
You
didn't have to guess where he was landing on an issue.
Yeah. It's like, I didn't like Trump on abortion, obviously, but I liked him on his just sort of, I'm going to stand on this stage and I'm just going to tell the truth about you. Right. So this kind of telling the truth, even though it's not PC thing, got a big boost. Like, that works. Like when he won, oh my gosh, that works. Like you're allowed to do that. And so, I've heard it before. I don't think I'm very Trump-like at all, but like I've heard people say, well, what I like about your content, you just kind of say it doesn't seem to matter that it's not PC.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't seem to matter if it's not PC with your own people.
When you're not trying to be incendiary.
Yeah. I think that the regular person can tell when something's sculpted to meet some kind of expectation. Like whenever a person says, like when some of these pro-lifers go on campuses and they put up their signs and they do their things and they do their own lectures and stuff, and the leftist person comes out there to fight them and says, well, you're really just a Christian. This is all really just Christianity for you. And the pro-lifer goes, no, we register as faith-based to protect us from Kamala Harris if she were to become president, blah, blah, blah,
Or they'll take the intellectual sidestep, which is like, hey, I don't need to defend this using the Bible.
Yeah, I can put that to the side. I can do this. And they do all that. And I think the student's just like, what kind of disingenuous slop is this? Like
they might disagree with it, but they'd rather you just be serious and upfront.
They do.
Right.
And I find that's like a trend.
Well, that's the thing with Gen Z. Sorry to cut you off, Ross, but that's the thing with Gen Z is like they can smell inauthenticity. So as a small example, there have been a handful of times every year I will have someone that's about to come on the show and their assistant will reach out to me and say, hey, can you send me the questions so we can give them to, John Doe to prepare for the interview? And I said, no.
Yeah.
But
because you want authentic,
right? And I'm like,
answers.
If I give them the questions beforehand, their answers are going to just smack of inauthenticity, and an astute podcast listener is going to smell that immediately.
Yeah, he's crafting it,
right? And so it's like that's not what I want. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, look at my track record. I have a full track record of non-gotchas, right? I got a full track record of curiosity, and I'm trying to tee you up because I've actually read your book, I've actually engaged with your material, and I want to tee you up to where you can give the information to my audience that I now have in my brain because I read the book beforehand, and it should work out well for everybody. I get good content. Yeah. You get to sell books. Everyone's happy.
Even if it's not 100% agreement.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm okay with missing each other a little bit. And sometimes I'll go back and listen to my interviews and I'm like, man, I really should have pushed more there. Or man, I really kind of let that point go because I was thinking about how much time we had left. And but ultimately I think these kids, they're like, man, I don't care what you say. Can you just say something you mean? Can you just say it with your chest?
And they definitely don't want you to be lying and hiding anything. And I feel like I get tons of respect from like homosexuals, right? And they'll ask me about homosexuality and I'll tell them.
Yeah.
And then I'll show them love. Like I'll treat them like a human and talk to them.
Yeah. And sometimes love means you say things that don't sound so nice.
I do think that this is sin and that you're in rebellion against God's design. And that if you walk in this way, you will not inherit the kingdom of God. It says that, but I can tell you good news. Like your sin is like my sin. I'm separated from God and same Savior, same, and they're just kind of like, huh. Most Christians like on college campuses that I know, because they always bring up, well, I've got a Christian friend. He doesn't do that. And I'm like, well, your Christian friend,
it's a derivative of if you hear someone playing Sweet Child of Mine in Guitar Center and he's terrible at it, you don't blame Slash for that. That's not his fault. It's the person playing the guitar.
Yeah, yeah. And so like that, so that is a trend in that the students come up and talk. And if you are giving, like you're telling them that this is what I truly believe and I'm going to be consistent, because they'll try to gotcha you all the time.
Sure.
They'll you'll say life begins at conception and be like, oh, okay, so say you have a Petri dish and it's got, embryos and then you have a baby and I'm going to drop both of them. Which one do you catch? I always say, oh, the embryos. Why? Just to kind of, I don't know if that's what I would do or not, because it's a false.
It's an insane scenario.
It's a stupid, like you probably catch the baby if they're your brother,
right.
And you probably catch the embryos if they're your embryos, right. Like, so you run into the burning building to care for the people, it doesn't mean you don't value the other people. So they put these stupid scenarios and I'll answer them and they'll be like, whoa, what the heck? And I'm like, well, yeah, because they're image bearers of God. And like, wait, you're being all religious and stuff. I was like, yeah, well, I think that if I'm not religious on this, I don't think I'd have
no reason to argue.
I don't think I'd have motivation or real.
I want to actually park here for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because even recently, because I want to know what the culture is saying. I want to know how their arguments are shifting so that I can be ready, so that I can equip men to push back darkness. Because that's why I was put on this planet, to equip men to push back darkness. And I remember someone saying, burning lab, you've got a 4-year-old girl in one room and you've got 1,000 embryos in the other. Who do you save? So it's a false equivalency. But I asked around to some people privately, and I did a little bit of research, and I kind of, amalgamated an answer to where it's like, that's not enough information. And you kind of alluded to it, but I just wanted to kind of double click it just a little bit. Okay. And so if someone were to say that to me, I'd say, what is my relationship to the 4-year-old girl in this scenario? Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Well, is she my daughter? Like, is she my niece? Is she a stranger? What is she? Oh, because if it's my daughter and none of the embryos are mine, and I do want to ask you about IVF as well. Yep. None of the embryos are mine. I am primarily on this planet. I'm to love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love my neighbor as myself. My primary neighbor is my spouse. My secondary neighbor is my children. My tertiary neighbor is everybody else. And so, to the detriment of those souls, I'm going to take care of the soul that was entrusted to me. Yeah. And so you ask the questions both ways, but it's a disingenuous thing because it's being asked by someone that's pro-abortion. Pro-abortionists are not asking who they're allowed to save. They're actually asking, who am I allowed to kill without consequence?
And they're wanting you to just somehow give them that.
And so it's a false equivalency. And so you have to get them to answer a bunch of questions before you give your question. Yeah. And so if you say, so this is what I would say, it always gets down to, okay, I'm not related to the 4-year-old girl. I'm not related to these embryos that are in the womb. And what I will say is that these embryos in the womb my choice does not affect who's valuable in this scenario. But in this scenario, embryos that cannot feel pain, image bearer of God, outside the womb that can feel pain, I'm going to prevent the pain. And also, let's bring up Piper again. I asked Joby Martin about this. He led me to what John Piper thinks about Romans 1, and his read of Romans 1 is that kids that are before the age of accountability, which would include
they're all going to
embryos, that they're just going to be taken up to the Father. There's no election happening between this or that because God knew before time they would never live outside the womb anyway. And so I'm like, in that scenario, that's my decision. But also, all of them are made in the image of God and deserve to live
and
until natural death. And
you choosing this one over them doesn't mean anything.
So that's how I would answer it, and that's how I'm helping people. But
here's a good one. Yeah, I did this one. I don't know if we've got it or we're going to put it out or something. So you say, all right, if I answer this, can I give you one in exchange?
Okay. Yeah.
And they're like, okay, sure, whatever. And you say like, okay, so there's a burning building. Okay. In that burning building, do you have a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or girlfriend or a mom or dad? It's like, yeah, okay. So there's a stairs up, and then your mom or your daughter or whatever, your son is in this room. And then there's 3 black people in this room. And you run in, or there's this and a black person or whatever. And who do you save?
Oh man, they get stuck.
And then they're like, well, I'd save most of them are just like, they'll be like, well, my mom or my daughter or whatever. They're like, oh, so you think black people aren't alive and aren't human
and don't deserve to be protected?
That's how their analogy is working.
Right.
And then you can get them to see that. And then usually they'll run off. Well, they'll end that thing. But I will also do the thing where I just will I'll be like, well, I'll save the embryos and just let the baby will heal or something like that. Yeah. And they'll be like, oh. And I'm just messing with you. Your thing is dumb. And I'll try to explain it.
Well, since we're talking about embryos, I do want to get back to the trends that you've seen. I don't want to fall too far off of that.
No, this is perfect consistency thing because they will bring up IVF.
And so I've had some takes, like all kidding aside, no tongue in cheek. I've had some takes on the show where even my biggest supporters are like, oh, Kyle, that one's a little rough.
Yeah, don't like that.
One of the biggest ones is I think pit bulls are wild animals and shouldn't be able to be owned by individual people because if you delete pit bulls, Dobermans, and Rottweilers, no one in America dies from a dog death, pretty much. They basically just is statistically non-existent. Yeah. And so, I've argued that, but then everyone thinks about their pit bull or the nicest pit bull they knew when they were a kid, and they don't think about the fact that it's mauling, infants and elderly people at an astonishing rate in this country. So people didn't like that very much.
Yep.
And I've said
you lost a subscriber.
Yeah, and I've said some other things that people are just like, well, and right now I'm like, Candace Owens seems like she's losing her grip on reality. She doesn't provide an evidentiary basis that's a high evidentiary standard for her truth claims.
I've seen that.
And and I've been told that, I'm completely missing the mark and I'm absolutely full of crap on that and all. So I've said things that are incendiary. But the thing that I think has ruffled the most Christian feathers has been my position on IVF, because this was my position on IVF as of a couple of years ago. Well, I have a niece and nephew because of IVF. IVF is a net positive because I love them and I can see them and I can touch them.
Okay.
And then I remember reading a book by the 40 Days for Life guys, and there's a chapter where they talk about the moral ramifications of IVF. And I remember being like, why is this a chapter? This is a morally neutral thing. That's how ignorant I was of the process. And then I read through it. I was like, well, sheesh. Like, I didn't realize that like 95% of people made via that process are never going to live outside the womb. And you're creating a dozen human beings at the hope that one will take whatever that means. And then you get into the issues with, okay, now designer babies. Okay, now homosexuals are coming together and having designer babies made. And this guy went to Harvard and they married somebody that was a good collegiate athlete and they have blue eyes. And so we're going to, make this baby and shove it in the rented womb of some woman that we're going to steal the baby from at the end of the process, but give her a, convenience fee. And then I heard Al Mohler talk about it. And I was like, oh my gosh. He's talking about the moral ramifications of this. Then I heard Lila Rose talk about it. I was like, holy sheesh, what is going on right now?
Yep.
So I did a big, wide net study about IVF. And then I did an episode that was called Christians Should Not Use IVF. Now,
you got a bunch of pushback.
Right.
I bet.
Well, now a bunch of people that are intellectual cowards saw the artwork, which was just a petri dish, and they saw the title.
Didn't even listen to it.
Of course they didn't, right?
Yeah.
And they immediately castigated me and the F you mother effers. And I can't believe you, from Christians, by the way.
Yep.
And that I can't believe you would say something like this. There were people that were talking to partners of mine, like partners in business and partners in ministry.
You need to drop him.
Yeah, you need him. He's marking a void now. How dare you continue supporting this individual? Did you hear what he said, even though they didn't hear what I said either?
It's a great golden calf.
And, Katie Faust has come on the show before and she's talked about it, and she just basically looks at her audience. She basically was like, I don't care if this hurts your tummy. Kyle's right. So find a way to deal with it, kind of a thing.
100%.
But that is one thing in your content. I haven't even heard you talk about this. I'm sure you have. Is that so far beyond the core arguments? And you're trying to argue, you don't want to argue some seemingly niche thing when somebody doesn't even believe life begins at conception. Going to IVF, there is a connection, but for them, it's almost too philosophical. It's too much in the world of science and technology and all that. And so I haven't heard you really engage on it. But that's one thing that I feel like pro-lifers and Christians are really, really bad on. And here's the last thing, and then I'll give it over to you. Yep. I've been asked by people, well, what if technologically speaking, they can get it to where it's a 1-to-1? You have a woman and a man, they're Christians, and for whatever reason, like biologically,
ethical IVF,
right? So they've been trying for 8 years, they can't do it, and so we can do a 1-to-1 transfer into the womb. And my answer is morally speaking, you are removing the conjugal union from the creation of image bearers of God, which is anti-God's design, and we should not be playing with that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I've landed on the issue, and so I'm just curious for you how you've dealt with it, or even if you've had to deal with it very much.
So you make me feel bad.
Good. Yeah, I have that effect on people.
No, you make me feel bad because I was like, oh man, we talk about this all the time. I guess it's not good.
It just hasn't hit my algorithm.
I think
right?
it hasn't hit your algorithm. So what we have, hold on a second. Let me stay in my browser here. So I've done what people do outside of abortion mills, outside of IVF labs. Like
definitely haven't seen that.
So
I'm a bad fan.
Well, no, that's okay. I haven't done it enough. You're actually good. You're letting me know that I haven't done it enough. So we did back in 2024. We did launch a thing. So we have like a biblical view of in vitro fertilization on the Abolitionist Rising site.
So guys, just Google a biblical view of
IVF and Abolitionist Rising,
yep.
But also like this Untold Millions here on the Abolish Human Abortion website. It's in our FAQ and in our stuff like that. But what we did is, and this whole concept of Untold Millions, it's 100% right. Okay, I'll send this all to you because we've put it together.
We're gonna link to Abolitionist Rising in the show notes and everything.
I've got good friends who've adopted embryos multiple times. I've got there are a lot of abolitionists who have taken the call to rescue those being taken away to death to the point of saying, oh, we're going to open our wombs to rescue these children in these cryogenic chambers. They're basically cryogenically incarcerated, where they're going to either stay until they perish, or they're going
the freezer
to be
gives out.
They're going to be
donated to
donated,
science.
and they're going to be vivisected. They're going to be experimented on or used for all sorts of other nefarious things,
discarded.
or just
Not
thrown
enough
away.
Space left. Yeah.
And so this is a massively wicked, I think, just like equal to, greater than to abortion in the number of human lives destroyed by it.
The numbers are shocking, and people just don't know.
Yeah. There will be more, possibly. Like if you look at the numbers, there will be more human beings murdered via the IVF industry than the abortion industry this year in the United States of America.
Yep.
And it's the way that pro-lifers kill their kids. So the IVF thing,
and they call it selective reduction whenever multiple embryos take.
Yeah, you put them in there and you selectively reduce them. The whole idea that you can do it ethically, that you can kind of like, one man, one woman will produce one. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, and we're making it financially viable, but that's just not,
like,
even if the technology gets better, that's just
it. Yeah, it's not going to do that. It's never going to happen. And people will say that that's what they're doing, and they'll lie. Ultimately, I think this is why we ended up, the church that I was in had to leave, because here I am not aware that the pastor's daughter of Trinity Baptist Church is like engaging in multiple rounds of IVF. And I'm like the anti-abortion guy asked to come, say 5 minutes on a Sanctity of Life Sunday. And I'm up there talking about the implications of the incarnation for in vitro fertilization. And that like, hey, this is great. I'm not saying that human being, your kids or your niece or whatever, like, I'm not saying they're not valuable, they're bad, or they're
I'm saying their brothers and sisters are also valuable.
Yeah, I'm saying, yeah, exactly. And so it's kind of like, but this is it's so wicked. And we knew from the very beginning, just philosophically, like intellectually, you can study it from what's being done with the selective reduction to what's being done, with the leftover embryos and the experimenting on them and all that kind of stuff. You can look at it and see that it's evil and be like, it's bad. But in 2016, when Joseph Silk got that bill of abolition, he took his heartbeat bill. I never finished the story, but he took his heartbeat bill. He became an abolitionist. He gutted it, and he replaced it with life at conception. Abortion is murder, should be treated as murder. Senate Bill 1119 here in Oklahoma. And he put that forward. Who were the first people who came to the Capitol to say, this is a bad bill, you cannot pass this bill? It was the IVF. It was Eli Reshef from the IVF there at the big hospital. I can't remember the name of the hospital. And we're like, whoa, wait. This bill is saying abortion is murder and it should be abolished. And we're defining the intentional destruction of a human being from the moment of conception, which follows from fertilization, right? This is going to be abolished. Well, the IVF people were like, well, that'll shut us down. You can't abolish. If you abolish abortion, even if your bill says nothing about IVF, if your bill says life begins at conception and you're not allowed to terminate in any human embryo, IVF's toast.
Right.
And so that alone should, all these like sort of apologists for IVF should know. It's like, who's going to be linking arms with Planned Parenthood and going to the Capitol to kill your bill? It's the IVF doctor who sat there when you were having the meeting with them and told you all about how God's going to bless you and like did all the stuff and it looked all really pretty. He's an abortionist. There are no IVF doctors that are not abortionists.
And to elucidate your point further, because again, some people don't understand this process, but they will implant, let's say, 4 embryos at a time, and every now and then,
all 4 of them will take. So they'll go in and abort.
Yeah, it's called, they call it selective reduction. That's the euphemism. Yep. But, mom and dad are like, oh my gosh, we can't do 4 babies. And maybe the woman weighs 110 pounds and like physically being able to carry those 4, it could end her life. And, they have all these considerations. And because of worshiping at the altar of pragmatism, they're like, how about just twins?
Yep.
And then they come up with some sort of a rhetoric as to, okay, well, looking at the 4, here are the ones that have the best chance of da-da-da. And
they'll do that before they're even implanted too.
Right. So they're basically grading them
Eugenics.
And saying, all right, here are A+, people, like, okay, here are the ones where the DNA is a little funky. They may not be so tall. They may not be so jacked. They may not be so tan. And, And again, it feels better because you're in an air-conditioned, sanitized facility. It doesn't say Planned Parenthood on the sign. And again, I want to be clear about something because I know you'll echo this. If you have a child in your household right now that was created via the IVF process, praise the Lord that they are here and you are to raise up that child in the nurture and admonition of the Lord and put as much gospel kindling around that baby as possible. So when the Spirit sparks it, we got the bonfire.
Yep.
But also, that was not a one-to-one transfer. That's pretty much not a thing. And again, even still, you removed it from the conjugal union. You know, it's problematic.
Yeah.
It's something to be repented of, not something to chastise yourself because of. But then there's the practicality if you have people that are still in frozen arrested development.
No, I mean, think about it. Okay, we don't think that sex outside of marriage is good, right? There's a lot of people with a lot of babies, sex outside of marriage, and then they become more serious followers of Christ. And you don't have to run around saying sex outside of marriage is the way to go. Having babies before you're married is the way to go. You do not have to do that, right? So you can look at the child that's from sex outside of marriage, and they're valuable. They're your child. You love them. You can look at the child conceived in vitro. They're valuable, but you can condemn the process.
Right. The same thing with the child conceived via rape. And you know what I've done when I've spoken live is I have an actual sonogram of our second child, Elijah. And I've got an actual sonogram from a baby conceived in rape.
Yeah, which one of these?
Yeah, and obviously I didn't come up with that. That's a rhetorical thing. And I just say, anybody in the audience, just raise your hand, $100 to the person that can get it right. First one bold enough to make a call. Which one's which? And you can only, do it based off of this. No guessing. You have to tell me because you know. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's an impossible thing to answer, but it proves the point. And so I think, but we don't have that one-to-one thing for IVF because it's basically this thing where, again, I'm in this. I do this for a living. Like I'm in these different spaces. I'm consuming so much content. And I had no clue of the moral ramifications of this process. And then even recently, Albert Mohler, he was asked during a live Q&A about, he's like, they were like, well, he said IVF is a sin. And he kind of bought it back a little bit. Yep. He said, it's actually, I never said it was a sin, but he didn't say it wasn't a sin. And I was like, whoa,
this is the
Albert.
This is the same problem, man. It is the reason people aren't speaking clearly on this is because if you're a pastor and you're relying on the offering plate, you're losing some offering plate donors when you speak on this. If you're an Al Mohler, you're losing some connections to some organizations and some platforms if you speak clearly on this. You have got to be able, like anything. I mean, like sometimes, I'll look, I'm not like a big buff dude. I don't got the cool tattoo,
You can though. I can send you to my guy. He's not a far drive away from you, man. So we can work on it.
Okay, we're gonna. But I'm like, I just feel like I don't have the manly man sort of thing. But I I think that we have a serious lack of manhood when it comes to being able to say what you believe. And it's running rampant.
Well, let's go back to C.S. Lewis. How many men are without chests?
Yeah,
there are men with big pecs that have no chests. And in the context of C.S. Lewis, he's talking about conviction to where you can stand upon. I literally shared a meme today. It's that meme of it's a little cartoon where there's one guy in the bottom and there's like 1,000 people looking at him. And the one guy in the bottom has a little speech bubble that says, "You're all wrong."
Yep.
And we don't have enough men that are willing to say, I understand you feel that way. You're wrong, though. This is not a matter of agree to disagree because this is a statement of fact. And so, no, there is no agree to disagree on that because I've gotten to that with people where I've had very, very cordial debates on IVF. They're like, oh, well, I guess we can agree to disagree. And I'm like, unfortunately, we can't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's agreeing to disagree on something like I am trying to show you that what you're doing is rooted in Hitler's ideology.
It is eugenics.
And what you're doing is akin and constantly connected to abortion, pornography. Like it's going to be connected. Like, I mean, when you bring up like, how are two gay dudes having their babies? Like what is like these evils are attendant to their connected evils.
Well, I think there's an inconsistency that I see as well, because I will hear the same exact parents that will rail on something like Disney. I can't believe they're injecting LGBTQ stuff into the stuff. And I can't believe there's a bearded lady at Disneyland. And I can't believe all the different things. while they're paying their Disney Plus monthly subscription and planning their next Disney cruise.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry, Mom.
At some point, you gotta.
The amount of sourdough you're baking is not, gonna make me ignore what we're doing here. And we're all inconsistent, to be clear.
Yes.
But there's the evil we know and the evil that we don't. Because people are like, well, if we only shop at the places that don't give money corporately to Planned Parenthood, there's going to be nowhere to go. And I'm like, okay, I can understand that argument. I have clothes from people where, man, I don't agree with any of the corporate structure or the things that they do and the things that they stand for and give money to and all that. But I don't know about that. Disney's right in front of your face. This is the easiest one to be like, okay, you're telling me you can't replace your kids' cartoon time with anything else other than what's on Disney.
Yeah, the only reason to get like I know I'm losing people here. Sometimes the only reason to get like a Disney Plus thing or a Net is to cancel it.
Just to say I canceled it.
And send it, like you put this show forward to cancel, which I did do once. I can't remember what it was. Something happened. It was actually Netflix. It was like that kind of child porn thing that they put up, like dancing kids thing.
Right.
Like
that's why I told people you can't have a Netflix subscription while that is still on the platform.
I put Netflix on, and that happened like 2 weeks later, and I was like, canceled, but it was fun because I got to fill out the reason.
Right.
And so I'm like, there is a place for like boycotts and stuff like that can be really effective, but they're not going to be effective. Like Disney couldn't survive if everyone who truly believed that homosexuality and the LGBTQ and transgender stuff was like a satanic plot or something. Everyone who believed that, if you believe that, you couldn't have a Disney Plus subscription, they would.
So that's where I'm saying there's a
inconsistency,
kind of a generic base level inconsistency of people and what they're saying and then what they are doing. And so the same thing that I had to do with IVF is once I was faced with it, it's like, I can't just leave this alone, right? And now I made the decision, right? Because I've lost money because of certain episodes that I've done because I got booked to do a speaking engagement. Then someone goes and looks at my show, and episode 4 of this podcast is called Pussies in the Pews. I kind of burn the ships real early, and I'm like, this is part of our problem. The people that are going to be offended by this title are the exact guys that I'm talking about. And I had a very masculine audience. I didn't want guys with cauliflower and, busted noses to miss out on Jesus because they see his followers as doughy, frumpy dudes that they don't want to be like. But on the other side, it's like, there has to be some consistency in the messaging. And I just have to bring you what I've learned, because this is not, just some, hey, I learned about tax policy and here's this thing I would like to share with you. Although valuable, we're talking about literal human life here, but there's just a relative inconsistency with even following the thread. And I think people are, everyone's afraid to be disabused of their sincerely held beliefs, but I don't think very many people have a foundation for their sincerely held belief on IVF because they've never had to reckon with the moral issues of the procedure overall. And that's just what I wanted to be, is I wanted to just present it. Here's what some people have said. Here's where I land. And then, gosh, you just, you get crushed for it, but it's like, okay, but I wouldn't change it, looking back either.
Yeah, no. And it's awesome. I commend you for being willing to, like, it, you see it, it's going to have a cost. You do it anyway. That's what I think is a man with a chest. And so, and I know we were talking about it earlier. I don't want to jump back to it, but that's where I'm at with the whole pro-life incrementalism stuff as well. Like I'm building, I got all these views, and I could be a very successful anti-abortion guy, and I could open up my opportunities. I could quadruple them if I would not hold this kind of, we have to put an end to the pro-life movement if we ever want to abolish abortion.
Yeah.
So it does limit me, but like I actually happen to believe it's true. And so I have to say it.
And so you're either going to be sacrificing yourself in the process to make more coin or to have a larger profile. And I told people before, like the doofy kind of leadership business space, like if I wanted to make generic rah business leadership stuff.
You could be that guy, go do the stage thing.
Yeah, let me put the microphone on and you can do it. And here's what you just say in the mirror every morning. And here's your affirmation for Wednesday.
Well, you could do this where there's like, these are all the issues. And all Christians that are biblical and serious, they all agree on all these. There's no controversy here, and they're different from the world. And like these are radical things, but then there's like a few over here, like IVF's over here.
Right.
And so like
there's the burn the ships category where it's like, we're either going to be about it or we're not going to be about it. And so,
but if you don't get the IVF thing right, I don't think you can get the abortion thing right. That's why on the streets, and they've stopped doing it. It's like, how do you know? But that IVF question will come up because they've talked to other pro-lifers that have come to campus, and those pro-lifers have said life begins at conception. And they say, well, what do you think about IVF? And the pro-lifer will say, well, it can be done ethically and blah, blah, blah. And then the person will know how it's done because they're in a bioengineering or something. And they'll know, and they'll be like, no, you're inconsistent. Yeah. And now all of a sudden that pro-lifer who can't be radically anti-IVF because they're connected to all these right-wing organizations that are IVF friendly, and they don't want to lose, and they look consistent. And the student smells that inauthenticity, that inconsistency.
They mark and avoid the person.
And it's just like, I'm not really learning anything from this person. Whenever I've done that and gone like, and maybe it's just on our editors, it's not just on our editor.
Algorithm people, come on.
Yeah.
Like, why haven't I seen it?
When we've gone to IVF, which we'll have some good stuff because it's happened like a couple of weeks ago. I had a kid come up to me in the Plaza District here in Oklahoma City, comes up to me. I'm out there with the anti-abortion sign, and he's first thing out of his mouth. He's like, he's seen me or something online before, and he says something, thanks, I agree with what you're doing and all this kind of stuff. And he goes, hey, but what do you think about IVF? Like, and he's like, what do you think about in vitro fertilization? I think it's kind of controversial. He's kind of saying something. Was
he a baby?
Yeah. Well, he said it, and I go, well, I'm just going to shoot straight with you, man. Like, I think IVF as an industry is demonic. I just went to the demonic thing, and then it's like, let me explain it. Like, it's demonic. This guy, and we'll put up his stuff, and I got his contact. He goes, I'm so glad you said that. I and my sister, twin, are conceived IVF, and I found out about it recently. I am opposed to IVF, even though that's how I got here. And I don't like it when people are inconsistent on this. And I was like, what?
That's heavy.
And he lives in Noble or something. I don't know where he lives pretty close to me. I'm going to hook up with him and talk to him. But he was doing a consistency check on me as someone who was conceived. And I'm like, dude, you were conceived, and you're opposed to this? Because he knows how much death is involved in it.
Well, and also, so I've heard other things. There was a story from Lee Strobel, the introduction of Lee Strobel's like latest book. And I had just like panic cried whenever he got there, because he was describing this little girl who mom got pregnant with twins, and in utero, one of the twins passed away, right? And so they give birth to this beautiful baby girl. I think she's 3 or 4 years old, and they hadn't told her, because what do you tell a 3 or 4 year old? Like, hey, you had a sister, but they died late, like that kind of thing. And then little girl walks up to mom and says, Mommy, do I have a sister? And the mom is like,
some kind of memory or something.
Yeah, the mom is just like absolutely like gobsmacked by this. And she's just like, well, why'd you say that, sweetie? Well, I keep having this dream where this girl who looks just like me tells me that she's my sister. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I'm like reading this book about miracles and near-death experiences and all this kind of thing. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So you have kids, or people that are alive today that somehow, and I'm not getting super Pentecostal. I'm not going to start like waving a ribbon, and I don't have a tambourine under this table.
No, this is just Brave New World stuff. This is science.
That I don't understand. They feel an odd connection to a multitude of their brothers and sisters that are not alive. And they feel this kinship that they can't explain. It's the same reason when you talk to twins and they can't tell you why they finish each other's sentences and why they can oddly feel each other's pain, even though they're a state away. Like, it's just this weird connection that we don't understand the side of glory. And they feel a connection to their brothers and sisters. Yeah. If this is all just neutral, what is that? I don't know. I can't explain that. I don't have a plausibility structure for that.
Well, we live in such a jacked up world. This is a little different, but like there are people who are adopting embryos that have been cryogenically stored for 12 years, and those embryos are being born, and they've got, the embryo that was like some couple, harvested 20 eggs, fertilized them, and then got pregnant on the first one and then put the rest of them in a chamber and then, adopted them out. And they've got like a 13-year-old, right? And that 13-year-old has a conceived on the same day, newborn, and they can like run into each other and know each other or like look identical to each. Like, I mean, it's just like,
it's what you said. It's Brave New World stuff.
We're getting in just kind of some crazy, and some friends of mine, a local pastor in Norman, they tried to adopt a whole family and they've been implanting them and just trying, and a lot of them don't work. A lot of implantations fail, but they've got they're a white couple and they got twins. They're black because they were adopted embryos, didn't care what color they are. And they got tons of flack for white people adopting black, like better to leave them in the storage, and then they've adopted and they've implanted all these other siblings. And it's like this weird spiritual reality of those kids, even the kids that didn't implant, got to have parent, got to be adopted into the womb.
Yeah.
Got to perished from a failure to implant because of the fall of man. Even normal human beings not conceived in vitro fail to implant. It's very common. Sin has racked the womb, And so it's just like this sort of reality that's like, man, these two little girls have, these siblings. I don't know. It's above my pay grade. We don't know how it works, but, I believe, they're growing up in a different world. They're growing up in the lap of Christ, and we're going to die. We're going to meet them, and you're going to meet your miscarried children. There's going to be all these children that were aborted. And these are just spiritual realities. And yes, we don't understand scientifically how it's all working, but we know, like,
because there's a theological answer, not a scientific one.
Yeah, it's a theological thing but it's a reality. But the things that are true theologically are true in the world. And so that's why this little girl in Strobel's book, there's something going on there. I think that women who have had abortions, of their own that spiritually racked them in just insane ways because they have engaged in the malice aforethought termination of an image bearer inside of their wombs, that like Jesus was knitting them together in the womb and they murdered them. So it's like the place of the incarnation, like Christ entered the womb. It's an image bearer of God. It's the handiwork of God. It's a blessing of God, and they murdered them. And I think it just is spiritually just destroys them. And so we live in a world where like a fourth of the women are spiritually destroyed, which is, we're seeing it play out politically. We're seeing it play out culturally.
Right.
And so a lot of these people are like, repeal the 19th Amendment, I'm like, well, okay, but I'm hearing your arguments, but it's downwind from this reality and this practice that like we are allowing our women to just be like murderous. And it's just
without consequence.
Without consequence, spiritually just racking them to death.
New York City mayoral election, 81% of unmarried women 18 to 29 voted for Mamdani.
Yeah.
And people are trying to they're writing all these think pieces about why this is happening. And it's like, okay, certainly feminism is to blame, but it's like, there's this innate God-placed desire by a woman to be cared for by a man.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the feminist poison pill of I don't need no man has been taken by so many women.
And they can just be manipulated.
But they still have the innate desire to be cared for. So government becomes husband, right?
Yeah,
and so they can marry the government. They want to be cared for. And so any policy that takes care of whoever the new least of these category is, that's where they run to, because I don't need no man means that I still need to be cared for, though, because that boss babe, corner office, extra handbag thing only goes so far.
Yeah, they don't even want that.
Right. And then whenever they become 40 years old and now they're looking around at the other single cat ladies in their life and they're just like, man, I don't want to go out drinking wine every 3 or 4 days. And like, I don't need another vacation. Like, I want to grow old with somebody. And then you run into the issues of
and I want to
40
have
years
children.
old, right? Maybe a couple of abortions by that point because they were sexually promiscuous the entire time, because they have the right to be as equally unpregnant as a man and also to be as sexually promiscuous as one. So when you buy the lie, sometimes there are consequences, and you become downstream of that. But I do want to take the incredibly circuitous route back to what I was talking about.
Place, but it is all connected. Yeah.
So trends, and we're probably up to the 3-hour mark at this point on the conversation. But I want to kind of know, like, All right. So trends, I actually want to ditch that question because trends are boring. I want to talk about this stuff where things get hairy, right? Because there are people that are wrong and they're wrong, but you're talking to them. At some point, they just get mad. A lot of times they just scurry off, right? They'll say something, they'll flip you off on the way out, and they're just like, blah, blah, as they trail off of the microphone, and you can't hear them and you can't see them. And so that's just kind of their thing.
They say their big, bad, scary thing.
They say their big, scary thing, and then they run to their dorm room and play video games and like whatever the thing is, right?
Yep.
But there's got to be some times where these things have gotten so hairy, and we live in the post Charlie Kirk era where regardless of who you think did it, whether it was a evil cabal of TPUSA and Erica Kirk and Donald Trump and Netanyahu and the rest of the Jews that they killed Charlie Kirk, or if it was just some crazy homosexual guy that had a furry boyfriend that just wanted to take a shot and it was an easy one. Yeah. Whatever you believe at those extremes or
whichever
anywhere
those
in between,
are more likely.
He was killed on a college campus while expressing his First Amendment, beliefs on very important topics. This is what you do day in and day out. Yeah. And just because you're on the University of Central Oklahoma campus, which is in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is like Camelot, or if you're in Norman, or if you're in Stillwater, or if you're some boardwalk somewhere doing these things.
Yeah, he was shot in Utah.
Right. The level of people that, whether it's clout, whether it's demonic possession or oppression that's leading them to, take a firearm and end a life, all that stuff's in there. And so when you're not really ever having knockdown dragouts because people typically disengage before that, at least from what I've seen. And we've already proven your algorithm people suck at this. But like, at what point, like, are you like, no, he's not sorry, it's real life. But like, at what point are you thinking like, man, while I'm engaging right here, someone could just come up right here and it's all over? Do y'all have a security protocol? Is it just, hey, we're going to put it in God's hands and let him protect us? What's going on?
So, all right. One thing to say in preface of it, before the Charlie Kirk thing, I didn't really think about it at all.
Really?
Not really.
No. Well, you know what's funny about that? My wife and I, previous to Charlie Kirk, we had the discussion about me potentially going to jail for the things that I've said, but we really had never had to reckon with her being a widow. A widow with two boys.
To think about that until something like that.
Yeah.
I think, in particular, I have a bit of a, personality characteristic where I've actually maybe been wrong on this, kind of a blind spot. And so I've gone out and I've done this, not just in Oklahoma. I mean, I've done it in Seattle and, I've done it pretty much everywhere. There were super, super liberal places, super, super conservative places. I basically run into the same things all the time. But, my fear, the only kind of thing that's entered in my mind prior to Charlie Kirk is I've been surrounded by a lot of people and they kind of get up in my face and, there's a couple of videos where you see like big guys get up in my face and, breathe their stinchy breath on me and stuff. And, or, kind of front like, hey, say one more word and I'm going to, get you or whatever. I've experienced that. And I've always found, even though I'm not like a physically, like I'm taller than a lot of people, but I'm not like physically
imposing.
Yeah. I found that the fact that I don't look like I want to fight and I, that's not my sort of demeanor, I'll do things like if I think someone's going to swing, I'll show them the palms of my hands and also protect myself.
Right. Yeah. Create some distance.
Sort of thing. But I found that mine just not wanting to engage physically like that has pretty much de-escalated every situation I've ever been in. But the one that I think of is in big kind of hairy situations, just someone kind of like walking by and shanking you type thing. I have thought of that before. The gun thing, I never really thought about because, and even the Charlie Kirk thing, I don't think much about it because what Charlie Kirk did is he would advertise these things. He had set up under this big tent. He'd have all these people there. He'd be there from this time to this time. And it's just like shooting a duck in a barrel, right? It's just like right there. And, there's almost nothing you can do. I just go places. We don't like really announce it. I just show up, but there could be like a crime of passion. Like someone's like, oh, this guy made fun of me. Or I've seen this person on YouTube and like, the world would be a better place if he were dead. I guess that could happen randomly. But I do believe in the providence of God. And I do believe like, as harsh as it may seem on the Kirk thing, I think there's like a time and like God's got to allow that to happen. And so there's at some level, like maybe I veer too much in this direction. Like my wife doesn't like this, that I'm like this. And I'm like, at some level, I can't stop someone. I can prepare a little bit, but I think it's going to happen if it's going to happen. So I am trusting in God. I do pray a lot. We always pray. And I know that people are covering us with prayer. At another level, yes, we do have security. There's,
Okay.
I mean, you know, I don't want to say exactly how it all is, but you know, when we're doing certain things, you know, there will be someone there that's doing that. And they don't necessarily look like anything. You know, they may be big. They're just kind of like, you know, hey, what's that random construction worker doing right there? You know, but so like we do take it into consideration. There are a lot of things, you know, that I, you know, you don't really see it maybe in the videos, but there's a certain amount of head on a swivel, paying attention to your environment and everything. I'm trying to do a lot of de-escalation stuff. I'm trying to, you know, be very, you know, joking and winsome as much as possible. And then with actual front on bullies, yeah, I found that it always goes away. Now that's not, you know, I'm not saying that I've never worn armor and that sort of thing, like I will, but, on a college campus and that sort of stuff, I'm less worried about, guns than I am knives. So I'm prepared for knives.
Well, and here's the other thing that we know about gun-free zones. Like, okay, a sign on the door doesn't prevent the gun from coming inside.
That just prevents law-abiding citizens from having guns.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I tell law-abiding citizens that ask me. They're like, well, I know you carry. Do you carry like everywhere you go? And I'm like, well, I've told you before that I don't outsource my argument to the local magistrates, or I don't outsource my, argument?
Your protection.
My violence. I don't outsource my violence to the local magistrates. Now, I will call them as a cavalry, and I'm just like, yeah, send them, right? But I'm the first line of defense.
You're supposed to be able to protect you and yours.
And so, you know, take that for what it's worth and surmise, you know, meaning from that. But the thing I'm curious about for you as we kind of wrap to a close here is obviously, you guys, you know, Abolitionists Rising on all the socials, on YouTube, everything. Check out the show notes.
Yeah.
So we kind of know what you've done, but what does the future look like? Because yeah, you know, 5 years ago, TikTok wasn't a thing. And now if you don't have a TikTok, you're terrible. And I'm kind of one of those guys, like, I just had to pick one. And so I just picked Instagram because it automatically posts to Facebook. And so I don't check. And like the DMs on Facebook are so cavernous. So guys, if you're sending me a DM on Facebook, I'm never going to see it because there's like a magic inbox that pops up. I'm like, where's this been? Oh, 400 unread messages.
People think you're ignoring them.
Yeah,
it's like,
I'm not ignoring you. I respond to every email that comes in, and I respond to every DM on Instagram. I respond to them all. But we're not on X. Because in order to be good on X, you have to be interacting with people all day long. And I feel like that is soul sucking. Yep. I don't go in the comment section at all because it can be an absolute cesspool. And when's the last time you ran to a person that was like, yeah, I changed my entire worldview based on a comment somebody left that was really well worded on Facebook. It's not like a real thing.
Yeah, but I appreciate the comments. They help the algorithm.
Appreciate the comments. They help out the algorithm. But like, I pull pins on grenades and then I just walk away. That's just kind of like whatever my thing is. So we don't know what trends are going to look like. We don't know what AI is going to do to anything. All we know is it's going to, you know, incentivize this in person, face-to-face sit down type of thing, because there's probably going to be a day when someone's thinking they're interacting with me via, you know, a digital like Zoom reading or Riverside or whatever. And it's going to be a little bit of uncanny valley, but they're going to be like, no, this kind of seems like Kyle from Undaunted.Life. Like that's the world we're going to live in. So we're going to have to move to more of what you and I are doing right now. But for Abolitionists Rising, you know, and I don't even like looking at 3 to 5 years. I try to make the next correct step, right? Because 2 years ago, the forging table, which is a thing here, was not a thing. A year ago, my Dominion program was not a thing. A year ago, the Daily Blade, our daily devotional podcast for men, none of that was a thing. So if I was laying out a 3 to 5 year plan, I would just, you know, I think God looks at your 3 to 5 year plan and goes, that's really cute.
Neat.
You don't think you're going to get sick. You don't think, you know, I'm not going to blow up this thing over here in a good way and blow up this thing over here in a bad way.
Or give you a better 3 to 5.
Right. So long setup to a short question, but what is the future of Abolitionists Rising? What are those next steps that you want to take that are correct?
So right now, the step that we're taking, like literally right now, we're very concerned with is the reason we called it Abolitionists Rising instead of Abolitionist Rising. I'm the primary guy. We put other people on there, but I'm the primary guy in the videos and stuff, making the material and everything. It's our idea. We don't want just a bunch of viewers. We want a bunch of doers. And we're trying to transform the viewers to doers by creating some kind of like, it sounds a little militaristic, but army of abolitionists. And so we're starting at the beginning of next year, so working through the end of this year and the beginning of next year, we are planning to sign people up. And instead of it being, hey, right now I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to this college campus with this sign and this material to do this thing. We'll make this video and we'll put it out and we'll reach this many people. That's what I've been doing. It's like, oh, no. Okay, I've got this material. I got this pamphlet or this sign or this shirt, whatever. And I've got this list of these 5,000 people. And we're going to go to these particular institutions and do this particular thing all together on the same day, at the same time, with the same rhetoric, because it's abolitionists rising. So it's been, for the last 3 years, build up an audience, get people to understand what we're doing. Now it's plug them in and then mobilize them. And so the format that's going to take, and we've already been kind of taking it, like we have a very active Discord server with just a bunch of people. People get plugged in. Hey, I agree with this. I want to go do this. Like a lot of people think, they'll see like our channel, or there's like 4 or 5 channels that are very similar to ours, usually using the same signs and all that kind of stuff. The number of people that are out there going and doing what I do is beyond what anyone knows. Like I know because I sell the signs. There's like thousands of people doing this, and they just don't have film teams, or editors or something. And so we're going to basically try to mobilize the bulk of our viewers and do things with them. The other thing is we're going to militarize our politicize. I don't know what you're going to say. We're going to take our YouTube channel, which pretty much anything we put out is going to get a default 40, 50,000 views, which it needs to be higher for this, but long form content, 50,000 views, short, much more than that. What happens whenever we say, hey, abolitionist, we're all together on this. Let me tell you about this state with this bill, with this legislator. Here's the process that this bill goes through. Here's the good guys and the bad guys. It's going to go into this committee. It's either going to be voted yes or no on this committee. All of you, hundreds of thousands of people, email, text, call, donate. The money that you donate will help the good guys and hurt the bad guys. And so I'm kind of putting this out there before we do it, but I don't think you can stop it really. But it's like use the audience that we have and turn them to actual political value. And so we're not playing around. It's not really, I want people to change their ideas. I want people to watch. I want people to do, but I'm trying to make them into a very usable commodity in the world, to where a bill, say in Iowa, I don't live in Iowa, but there's an abolitionist legislator in Iowa, and he has a bill, and he's an abolitionist, and he can tell me what's the process, that bill from its filing to its signing and into law. What is it? Where's it going? And I can take my audience that I've built, and I can, step by step, tell people, all right, here's what the bill is. We will know, not just me, but hundreds of thousands of people will know exactly who it is that kept abortion from being abolished in Oklahoma or Iowa or Idaho or wherever we choose. So the immediate sort of grandiose plan is to make it less about me and more about the abolitionist movement. And then for us as an organization, Abolitionists Rising, just as the organization, here in 4 or 5 days, I'll be heading to Australia. I just got back from Canada. So I've been in Canada, where the abolitionist movement is kind of starting to get some legs, going to Australia next year, going to the United Kingdom, because the abolitionist societies and groups are kind of popping up. So sadly, fun, but also not so fun. I got 4 kids and, a wife that wants me home and everything. A lot of travel, a lot of building up of abolitionism elsewhere, because a lot of the things that have been done in our country that have kept abortion from being abolished, even in the midst of hundreds of millions of Christians from the pro-life establishment, need to be thwarted from gaining ground in some of these other Western countries. So a lot of that is where I'm kind of starting to focus: Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom. And so we're busily trying to, raise up support, prepare, increase our security so that we can do a lot more traveling. So hoping to spend, a couple of months working on, like a documentary project in the United Kingdom on Wilberforce, and also engage. I don't know how long they're going to let me stand on the streets and talk about abortion
especially in the UK,
in London. But that's the plan for next year. And we don't usually ask for funds, but we're going to start asking for funds to make that very possible. Because I'm not going over there without my family.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, especially if we're going to be over there for any length of time. So, man, I really appreciate you coming up to the studio today. It's been my pleasure. I'm glad we were able to weave in and out a lot of different things, but that's all for me. Is there anything else you want to get off your chest?
Well, no, thanks for having me. I've been a little under the weather, but I don't think
anyone could tell, right?
They may not be able to tell.
You busted that out there at the end. It's good.
Yeah, but if you watch the trajectory of the show, I think I got a little more alive as the show.
Yeah, you just had to warm up a little bit what people didn't realize happened.
No, man.
Yeah.
It was actually the Jocko Go.
That's
dude.
right. Look at your camera. Give them the ad.
I was dead when I came on this program, but about halfway through this bottle, I was like, whoo.
See, that's exactly how it goes. And as you were warming up, it was getting colder in my studio. So I snuck a text into my wife who's downstairs in the studio. And I'm like, something went wrong with the heater because it all of a sudden got freezing in here. And this is the coldest day of the year in Oklahoma, but I think we're okay. I felt the kick on at some point.
I noticed it very quickly get warm. So,
well, very good, man. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.